My hand's stable, I feel able to turn the tables, I could do this. Just keep moving, keep your hands up, stupid. I feel lucid, a new viewing. I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking. Everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to like sort of.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it still sucks. This is Phil J. Price, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show, your one-stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast, y'all. Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Big Blue. How you doing, my man?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just enjoying my day off. One more day, and then I go back. I did a 7-day stretch off, man.
Jeez, man. How'd you enjoy it?
Good. I mean, I ended up having to do a lot of yard stuff, but hey, at least I got it done.
That's good, my man. That's good. I'm glad you did. Today, we're going back into the Bryan Kohberger case. We're going to be talking about, the FBI's involvement, the cast, team that basically got his locations, things like that. And our guests today are a couple of folks who I kind of stumbled into on one of their lives not too long ago, and they were talking about the FBI cast. I was very impressed with what they had to say. I thought they'd be a good asset to be on the show. So here they are from the Thought Riot podcast. We have Brendan and Malia. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're great. But we got an echo right now. So I'm hearing you talking still. Like.
Oh, it's because
I can hear myself. Yeah, I'm gonna mute you guys for a second.
I think it's because they got the two windows open. Remember, like you do the two windows, and the other one's not muted.
I muted that.
You gotta mess with something.
Yeah, because that wasn't like that before. Huh. Yeah, I'm not getting an echo. You're not getting that echo either, right, Blue?
Not right now, no.
Let us know in the live chat if you guys can hear an echo on when me and Blue are talking. So while they get that figured out, Big Blue, when it comes to the FBI locations and or Bryan Kohberger's locations and what the FBI was able to do to get those, how important do you think that is to the case?
I think that's very important. That way he can't say that he wasn't in those areas because his phone was there. Even though if it was off and they can still track it, that's what I don't know yet. I mean, I'm itching to find out what the records show. But at least when he turned it back on, it shows a good idea. And when he was, I guess, stalking them for a little bit, the 12 or 8 times that he went around their house.
Mm-hmm.
To show how long he was there.
Right. Yeah, for me, I think the most important part about it is, you're right. It does show, a tendency, right? It shows, how many times he may have been in the area and what was the purpose of him being in the area. That's going to be the question that they're going to be asking and trying to answer. And if, they can pinpoint him to a specific spot, and let's just say that spot has that house in view, right? The 1122 King Road residence, then that's, it doesn't necessarily mean that he isn't, or that he is stalking them. It doesn't necessarily say that he isn't. It doesn't exclude him from it. You know what I mean? Like if they found if they were able to accurately point him down to a house, 4 blocks away where the 1122 King Road residence is not visible. I mean, does that really, that really doesn't mean much, right? It'd have to be close and it'd have to be visible.
Yeah. And I was watching something about this. I had to look it up. But yeah, I thought some prayers go out to the people out in Maine.
Is everything working out, guys?
Yeah, I think we are all good. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you good. We can hear you good.
Yeah,
Cool.
it sounded insane on our end. It was so weird.
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone.
But yes, hello. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming
No
on.
problem.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
So you guys are relatively new. Tell me a little bit about your podcast. Let everybody know about Thought Riot podcast.
Yeah, I've been interested in true crime almost all my life, and we started the podcast kind of with the idea of just wanting to explore different topics. It was a variety kind of podcast at first, where we had a lot of really in-depth conversations on our own time. We've known each other a long time, and we just kind of wanted to bring that to the internet. I don't know. And then we randomly covered Idaho 4.
Yeah.
When we were still doing like politics and random other
Variety
topics.
show.
And we went down a rabbit hole with it and
most.
decided to go, like most people have at this point. And we decided to go true crime full time.
Yeah.
Nothing but true crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just wanted to be able to create a platform where people aren't afraid to share their ideas. We see a lot of times in the true crime community where there are creators out there where you're welcome as a viewer as long as you think like me, and we don't believe in that. I think that any idea is valid, any thought is a valid thought, and we're willing to listen to it. Now let's figure out if there's any reality that we can tie to it. You know what I mean? And that's really the basis that we wanted to start our community and platform from. And we're just slowly growing it to, something that you guys have. So
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's we kind of have the same concept, but YouTube doesn't seem to like going way out the down the rabbit hole. So
yeah,
it's a little hard to keep it,
for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Here we've had many creators who have, thought like us and thought very different from us. It's always good to have a conversation. I believe in something like yin and yang, where you can't have too much of one side. You have to have a balance, because if you're just one-sided in one thing without hearing the opposition, then you have the tendency of blinding yourself. And, it turns into one of those sayings where to a hammer, everything is a nail.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, turn into that. Thank you, Mikey S., for being a member for 8 months. Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Glad to see you on the live. We missed you. So you mentioned that you guys started covering Idaho. Did you guys started covering that at the beginning? Was this from November 13th, or did you guys start covering it after Kohberger was arrested? At what point did you guys get into it?
Yeah, so we've only been in true crime and actually digging into it for about, I would say, between 60 and 90 days. So it's been about that long. And Idaho 4 has all the makings of any major conspiracy type crime out there, so it sucked us into it. We started analyzing some of the data, going through it piece by piece. And one of the hot topics was the cell phone data. And that just happens to be my expertise, after working in the cell phone industry for a decade and a half. So we started looking into some of that data that is out there, some of the details that are in the PCA, and then pulling up some of the location maps around cellular and things like that. And we've just kind of gone through each piece of the Idaho 4 case one at a time. So DNA, cell phone, GPS, and just kind of going through it. So
nice. Interesting. I like that. I didn't know that you were, I knew that you were, how can I put this? I knew you were knowledgeable in the field when I was watching the podcast, but I wasn't aware of your expertise. That's awesome. I have a lot of questions for you when it comes to the locations and things of that nature.
yeah.
So before we get into that, what's y'all stance on the case? Where do you guys stand on it? You guys think they got the right guy? You guys think that there's a lot of questions?
We don't have a stance.
Yeah.
We're
No
down the
stance?
middle with it. I don't think there's enough here to say whether or not. We're kind of waiting for the trial, but so far we just see a lot of holes in the evidence presented. And hopefully they fill in those holes in the trial. Like we both say all the time, we hope that Bryan Kohberger is guilty, because if he's not, we got a lot of problems. It's
Right.
scary. So neither one of us really have a stance on it.
Good deal.
Yeah, we see other people that could possibly, have motivation to have committed this crime, and had opportunity, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's too many things unknown.
Yeah, too many variables, and Kohberger tends to get the limelight a lot in this case. Obviously, that's a given. But I think the perspective that we're looking for most of the time when we're digging into this case is the justice system being treated and managed and researched and investigated fairly in this situation. So really, it's not about his guilt or his innocence right now, because we know we don't have enough of that information yet. We're waiting on more of that information to come out. It's more of, hey, does it look like our police, our law enforcement, the FBI, the court system, justice system is handling this case right?
One thing that we covered when we were still doing politics, which I think is super relevant in true crime, that we haven't really dug into, but I think is also relevant in this case, which we did do a video on character assassination.
Yeah.
But we didn't go into the statistics and the details of how media covers defendants biasedly, like showing them, like the most popular pictures of Bryan Kohberger are the ones of him in his
Orange.
in orange.
Oranges. Yep.
Though he hasn't wore orange for so long now. Like almost a half a year, or I don't even know. It's been a long time. But when we originally did it, I was taking it from the political side, showing how the racial disparities, like how, Black or Latino defendants were shown in their oranges, like 80% of the time. They weren't described. It was like random things like murderer, instead of their name, or statistics for victims instead of, interviews from their family. And I feel like Bryan Kohberger, you could take that and apply it to this and just show that when the media is being biased against this person, they're not going to cover them fairly, which affects how we all see the case.
Yeah.
We're filtering all this information through mainstream media and the documents we have that aren't sealed. So I think it gives us all a limited scope. So anybody, I feel like, that claims they know for sure what happened, I just don't trust that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't think anybody can say that they know for sure what happened. But when it comes to the orange stuff, me personally, I think that has a lot more to do with it's a color that tends to attract the viewer when it comes to a thumbnail or to any type of thing. It is something that we utilize. In fact, I think the thumbnail on this one is the background is orange, and that's on purpose. And so, but I do understand that other aspect of it, showing him in the media, on videos and things of that nature, solely in that, that is, showing light on one area. I mean, when I saw Kohberger the first time, he was, arrested, and he was wearing, I think he had like a dark something over, but he had I think he had the jumpsuit already on. And when we first got a real good glimpse of him was in court, he had the jumpsuit. And so he looked a lot more guilty than he did once he put on the suit. And as far as the criminal triangle that you guys spoke about as well, there's another point to it, and that's means. And what we know about this case is that somebody committed this crime. Somebody took the lives of 4 people without leaving DNA behind. Basically committed the perfect, if it's not Kohberger, they committed the perfect murder and at the same time framed him. That takes a lot. You know, I don't know who would
Yeah.
have the means to be able to do so. You know, is that a drunk frat person? I don't know. Is that an ex-boyfriend who's heartbroken and love struck? Doubt it. I mean, those are usually kind of messy and stuff like that when you have a crime of passion.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as detailed as this, you know. A person who's well versed in forensics, you know, that makes a little bit more sense. It doesn't necessarily say that it is him or that it is that person, but you know, I would say that it would make more sense. But like I said, you know, there's no way that we could know whether or not he's 100% guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt now until all the evidence is presented.
Right.
You know, because, you know, I mean, I couldn't say it. I tend to lean to, I think he did it, but I can't say without a shadow of a doubt that this guy committed this crime. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points there with color theory, because we absolutely try to utilize that too. So that's a really good point. And yeah, means is also incredibly important, and that does make you kind of scratch your head, I guess, like who had all of that.
Yeah, and I do think it's important too that look, we all like doing it. The whole point to our channel being called Thought Riot is digging into these conspiracy type topics, or what we call tin hat topics. But let's be real, conspiracies are really rare, really rare, and few and far between. Normally you have one or two fraudulent people that are part of a case, and one or two people can make an entire case, the whole system look like, you know, it's dirty and fraudulent, because from the one point that things start going awry, it just continues to spread further and further from the truth, you know. And that's what we tend to see in a lot of cases. And those cases, instead of identifying, highlighting, and finding out where that problem is, the whole thing gets labeled as a conspiracy, so nothing gets solved, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%. Mikey
Like
S comes in
Dominic.
with a yeah.
Yeah.
Mikey S comes in with a $5 super chat. I'm with you guys 100% about hoping PK is the guy, but I have lots of questions and doubts. The alternative is scary and tragic if it isn't him. 100%. You know, if it ends up not being him, you know, somebody else has been free this entire time. You know, have they committed another crime in this time that we're just not aware of? Maybe they changed the motive. They changed the MO. They didn't use a knife this time. Maybe strangulation was the next one. You know, something of that nature to just kind of cover up the fact that these crimes are connected to one person. If this person is a serial killer per se, and this is somebody who is, you know, extremely intelligent and is well versed in committing crimes like this, you know, I think there's a world where, you know, if they went in there, didn't take any souvenirs, didn't leave DNA behind, didn't do those things, is it possible that this person is so disciplined that they would change the MO every time so that you couldn't connect the dots? It's a good possibility there. You know, I mean, that makes more sense to me than, you know, a frat kid or an ex-boyfriend. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, let's put this thought in there. You know, say if it is him, right? Do you guys think this was his first crime this day? You know, his first murder?
Well, let's put it this way. Yeah. Instead of saying if it was him, whoever committed this crime, do you think it was their first time?
No.
Yeah.
No way. The way you react in a situation like that, like, you know, me and him both have like some kind of rougher backgrounds from when we were younger and young and dumb, you know, and you know, the way I see people who haven't had those experiences that could be life or death or
not murder.
No,
not murder.
No. Never killed anybody.
Yeah.
But the point is the way you handle adrenaline. Okay. The way you handle adrenaline when things are going awry, when things are crazy, which obviously if they're a serial killer, they have other things going on in their head too. But the way people react in those situations, especially if that's your first time, quadruple murder, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that they could have been that precise and that it wouldn't be just a mess.
It's
Which
funny.
I probably was kind of a mess, I assume.
Oh,
but
for sure. Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of people like to use the co-ed situation with Bundy, but fail to mention that he already had close to 30 other crimes or murders under his belt by that point. He was experienced. He knew what he was doing. And this crime mimics that in the same kind of time frame and the same kind of damage and brutality and viciousness.
Yeah, but the
But
survivors in
we
that
don't-
case were beaten to a pulp. Like they didn't call 911 because they were severely injured
yeah.
too. Like there's a lot of differences in that case.
Well,
Yeah, well,
it was 15 minutes in that case. So, and I know he used different tools and he was biting and things like that, which I wish someone had bit somebody in this situation, because then you would have a model of their teeth and we'd be a whole lot further in evidence and things like that. But just the overall time frame, and expertise. I mean,
I think if it is the first time for this person, they did a lot of studying. They had a lot of criminal background. I mean, to leave no footprints on a November day, I mean, it's got to be sloshy out there.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a really good point. I agree with you.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why you wear Vans. You wear
Yeah.
Vans because it'll blend in with all the other footprints.
right.
know.
Yeah, I think they had booties. I think he slipped on.
Well,
booties.
inside the
with
house.
Vans, huh?
Right. Exactly. Inside the
Yeah.
house, he wouldn't, if you wore Vans inside the house or outside of the house, let's just put it's outside the house. How many people were in and out of that house? In fact, the night before, there was 150 people that were supposedly there for a party. How many of those people wore Vans?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure a ton. But one thing I don't understand is how do you go from room to room without leaving a trail?
Yeah.
That really doesn't make sense. And that's what makes me wonder if it's more than one person.
Yeah.
I think the main reason why there's no trail in my theory is that both the girls were in the bed. I mean, they didn't have a chance to get off the bed. See, he had no chance of stepping on any blood. I mean, even though he did, it sounds like he did stab him quite a bit. There would have been, blood splatter everywhere. Maybe he switched booties on his way out to that room to another room. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're that smart, you would do it.
That's a lot of time, though. I don't know. That just seems like so much extra work.
It takes 5 seconds, 10 seconds to change out of booties. I do it all the time at work.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, really? Yeah, that's
that's
true. It would be quick to slip them on and off, but I'm just thinking like in the heat of the moment, I don't know. It's just like a lot.
Yeah.
But you're right. It would take a lot of studying and thinking about this, like a lot of forethought.
And,
Yeah, the
and for that-
emotional awareness in that situation to be able to understand like how it's going to feel. And, we've done a lot of research and studying into serial killers, and normally their first comes with some uncontrollable outburst of emotions, whether it's laughter, whether it's feeling like they're going to pass out, whether
Yep.
needing to sit down, you know what I mean? Like the adrenaline is at such a high level, they can't contain themselves. So
Yeah.
in this case, you have not one, but two, but three, but four, and having the ability to control your auto human reactions in that situation. It's wild. It's crazy.
Yeah. We talked about that because we're with the living survivor that heard something, thought it was just them upstairs. I thought you would hear a scream, even if it wasn't from the. I mean, they were punctured multiple times,
Yeah.
and you would. So that means either the first shot was to a vital organ in both victims. You got to be smart enough to know where those shots have to go. You have
Yeah.
to know the human anatomy to be able to hit those, to hit that body part, to be able to take somebody out in a few seconds to stop them from screaming, even if they're screaming in agony. I mean, I see people with knife wounds and gun wounds. They're screaming in agony. A stun gun doesn't knock you out. I mean, I've been stung with a stun gun, and
I
somebody
stunned
put a
him.
stun. Yeah, somebody put a stun gun. A stun gun doesn't knock you out necessarily.
No, it won't. You might be like out of it for like a moment, but
Yeah.
you can still scream even while
Yeah.
being,
Yeah,
hit with
I
a
mean,
stun gun.
there's a ton of videos that they do with the police trainees, and when they get hit with a stun gun, they let a scream out.
Yep.
So for me, though, as far as why I think there isn't a trail in the house, though, is let's think about this. The first attack happened in a bed, right? So what type of blood would be getting on the person who committed the crime? It would be blood splatter from pulling back the knife and then going into the body. Because the victims are horizontal and laying on a bed, gravity would pull it down towards the mattress. So there wouldn't be a puddle of blood for him or her to have stepped on, right? So the only blood they'd have would be cast off. So unless they bumped into a wall or walked into something, there wouldn't be a trail. And if he's wearing, these dicky coveralls, which are suspected of what he's to be wearing, those absorb, liquid. And if he were to just kind of clean the blade, I think it's quite possible that he could have made that trip down and around without leaving blood. Now, on the other rooms, Xana and Ethan, well, we know that Xana's body was on the floor, right? And that's from the probable cause affidavit. The PC affidavit doesn't say where Ethan is at, but I've talked with Christy and Goncalves, Kaylee's mom, and she told me that his body was also on the floor. Now, we do know that there's a thud heard at one certain time, and based on what Christy has told me, it would appear that thud, or maybe not even the thud, but one of the bodies that was on the floor would have been there after the alleged killer would have left, because their body was blocking the door. Right? So it wouldn't have been there before the killer left, right? It would have had to have been there after. So whether the body fell off of off of the bed or scooched over or whatever, it wasn't there when that killer left that room. From leaving that room to heading out to the back is a big question mark. That's where I find the most question is, why isn't there a trail there? Because we know that wasn't, that attack wasn't on the bed, and we know that there's extreme amount of blood there to the point where it's coming out of the back of the house. So that's on the floor. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I question that aspect of it. And
absolutely.
And that's my question. Do you guys think there was a cleanup? Do you think that's why there isn't blood leaving?
Well, the latent shoe print makes me question that clearly. So we found pictures of the mattresses, and both of them, there's two mattresses, they both have blood stains on them.
Yeah.
So clearly something happened in Ethan and Xana's room on the bed at some point. And I think your theory about maybe him falling out of the bed is a good one. Like maybe he had a little bit of life left and was maybe holding himself up a little bit by a leg, like kind of half on, half off kind of situation. Or maybe was trying to get to Xana in his last moments, which is horrible and terrible to think about.
Yeah.
Or a phone. But I didn't realize that. I didn't even connect that with the loud thud. That kind of shocked me a little bit. But I wonder about that too. I think the booties theory. Now, let me ask you, since you have experience, Big Blue, with wearing booties, have you stepped in something and completely saturated them before? Does it go through? What happens?
I mean, they do get wet, but the inner side has most of them, the inner side has a lining, so it won't go 100% through. They do get wet though. You'll see the wet prints. I know because I used to also use them in my other job as construction, and everybody builds these $300,000 houses, and something went wrong with electrical, and they'd call you on a rainy day to go fix it. So I would have mud on my boots from fixing something outside, and I had to walk into the houses. So I would put them on, and the mud that was in my boots would not go through. That's why I know it won't go through, because there's a lining in it. But getting them on and off, if you have mud, you're gonna get it on your hands.
Right.
We're gonna take a break real quick, guys. I want to
Yeah.
talk about this that's happening right now out of Maine.
Okay.
Let me pull this up. 16 people have been confirmed to have passed, and
Whoa.
an active shooter who is still at large. So at least 16 people have passed in the multiple shootings in Lewiston, Maine, Wednesday night, according to multiple law enforcement sources. 50 to 60 people are injured in the incidents, though it's unclear how many injured due to gunfire, the sources told CNN. Suspect remains at large, the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office said in a post on Facebook. We are encouraging all businesses to lock down and are closed while we investigate. The Sheriff's Office said earlier Wednesday evening. I believe he went into a hospital at one point.
Like bowling ball, like a bowling alley right there.
Yeah,
He's just walking around town, lighting the place up.
yeah, that's what it looks like.
Oh man.
The sheriff released images of suspect for identification. This person is seen holding a high-powered assault-style rifle. Maine State Police also said that they're responding to an active shooter situation in Lewiston. Please can stay in your homes, lock the doors. If you see suspicious activity, individuals, please call 911.
Any confirmation of more than one person?
No, it seems like it's just this one guy.
Man,
It's pretty insane.
that is. We just hope everyone that's out there is safe. I mean, shoot, go grab your kids, go grab your family, and if you have a basement, just sit in the basement, man.
Yeah. Get
It's
down
not
low.
worth it.
Get down low. Lock your doors.
Yeah.
I don't even understand how this stuff just is happening in a supposed civilized, nation that we are. And in today's age, it's 2023. I just don't get it. I don't get how these things are still continually happening.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody gets it, to be honest. It's unimaginable.
Yeah. The bowling place, a restaurant, and Walmart distribution center.
Jeez.
What?
So maybe he worked there.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
You got to start there and follow the
I'll be
trees.
right back.
Okay.
No problem.
And this is in Lewiston, Maine. Out in Maine.
Yeah. That's one thing about our show. We switch topics in our heartbeat. So
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I mean,
we
this
totally
is-
do it too.
Yeah, this one's pretty.
it's crazy.
Yeah, this one's crazy.
Our first for the families. Yes.
I mean, it's good to put it out there in case somebody's like watching your show and not paying attention to the news or anything. Hopefully they got alerts on their phones though.
Yeah,
I
I
just
would
got-
hope so too.
I just got an Amber Alert actually right before we came on, and it's an Amber Alert for Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa. An autistic, nonverbal 14-year-old female, Nina Williams, was taken by a non-custodial parent, and they got Iowa plates NSG 589. It's
Be on the lookout for that if you're in that area.
Yep,
so
it's a blue 2016 Chevy Cruze.
it's a domestic.
It is. But you know,
Yeah,
Par-
you still have to be
parents-
careful.
parents be doing crazy stuff to their kids
No,
too.
I know. I just saw a video of that. I think it was a Florida woman. You know, when she was driving over a bridge and stopped and just jumped off the bridge, and when people realized there's 2 car seats in the back seat, you know, and they had her to call the police, but they tracked it back to her home, and there were 2 deceased children at her home.
Yeah.
She jumped off the bridge and intentionally didn't swim. So yeah, there's a lot of crazy people out there.
Jeez, man, this is absolutely terrible. It's unimaginable and disgraceful. I mean, there's no words to explain it. Shouldn't be happening.
No, it shouldn't be. So he's on the loose still, and do they have a name for him? They don't have a name.
They don't have a name yet. Yeah, he is still on the loose. I am checking out their Facebook right now. This is where they say they have some information. All right. Just this picture.
Is he barefoot?
Nah, he's got shoes on.
Okay.
He's got some. Those look like cargo pants.
Yep.
And they look pretty full.
Yep. So he's probably got bullets in there.
I wouldn't be surprised if he has magazines. Yep.
Yeah, a couple of mags.
And it looks like he has something in his sweater as well.
Oh yeah. You think that's like a handgun on his hip, like tucked in his pants?
Could be. Man,
I don't know. It's kind of big though.
Yeah. That could be a gun in a sweater, a handgun. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like bulging like a lot.
Yeah, it probably has clips, mags in there.
Yeah.
That's what I think too. It's a couple of mags.
Yeah, and he has 2 on the gun too for quick release.
Yeah, it's got what do they call it, banana clip?
I don't know.
Where it's like 2 side by side, so that when you're I forget what it's called, but you just run out of one and put in the other.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called off the top of my head, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So he was prepared, it looks like. I don't know what this was, but it's really unfortunate.
I just don't know what makes somebody snap like that and want to take out like as many people as possible, usually with them because they know they're not going to survive it, you know.
Right.
I don't get that. Like, you know, serial killers are a certain type of breed, and these guys are serial killers, but they're different.
Yeah, mass.
They're mass murderers.
Yeah, because they don't hide who they are, and they do it in broad daylight. These guys are just crazy.
They just snap but usually a lot of them plan it ahead of time for a while.
Yeah,
to have that kind of weapons and backup mags and he went to places where there's going to be people at, you know, there's league nights. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he planned this out.
You know, it just makes me concerned for not only people's lives, like clearly their lives, but also everybody else who has to watch things like this. Like it makes you not feel safe anymore at all. Like no matter where you are. And it makes me wonder the effect on society as a whole when people are scared to take their kids to school. They're scared to go to the mall. They're scared to go to a parade. You know, they're scared to literally do anything.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. There's got to be a fix somewhere to help prevent this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know how we could get there. It's probably slow change, but
I was going to say there's no quick fix solution for something like this. You know, it's a process, and you know, unfortunately, I doubt this will be the last.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, we'll continue to, if there's any updates on this, we'll bring them, you know, back in. And yes, 50 to 60 injured, and he's still on the loose.
Jeez.
Insane.
Oh,
insane.
yeah.
We hope for the best with everyone out there.
Yeah. And the police officers that have to go hunt this guy down.
Yeah.
100%. All right, so let's get back into Bryan Kohberger. Let me pull this out, remove this real quick. There it is. So we were talking about, I don't even remember where we're at.
Yeah.
But so Bryan Kohberger, you guys looked at the cast information. You were talking about that was basically one of your expertise there, Brendan. I'm going to pull up what you had given us. I don't know if you can zoom in or zoom out and stuff like that, but perfect.
Yeah.
What kind of map are we looking at?
We are looking at a cell tower map for AT&T in the Moscow area. Now, I mean, a cell tower map is used by all carriers, though. But when you're looking at a map like this and you want to see the coverage, And I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head, but when you see a tower, they're always in a triangular shape, and there'll be like multiple rows of white bars that you'll see. And normally whoever owns the tower is at the top. They're the top row of white bars that are up there with that 360-degree coverage in the shape of a triangle. So it's those white bars cover 120 degrees on each side. And all the cell phone companies use whatever towers are out there. So on this map here, we're highlighting just the AT&T tower, or just the AT&T bars and coverage. And that gives us the coverage for the area. And honestly, it's some of the worst coverage I've ever seen. I can only think in my 15 years of 2 or 3 places that have this crappy coverage. So that's one thing that we were just pointing out when we were going through some of the cell phone coverage is, as we're on Reddit and as we're on YouTube talking to people and asking questions and digging into the Idaho 4 case, a lot of people like to lean on that cell phone data. And unfortunately, I don't think there is much more than what we currently have now. And I think that could be partly the reason why a true FBI agent of CAST isn't involved in presenting that information. If I had to guesstimate here, I would say that they wanted that cell phone data and information to get the arrest warrant, to then backfill some of the investigations evidence, to then get the arrest to stick, right? The charges to stick.
Right. Yeah, I strongly suspect that they got Bryan Kohberger's name on December 19th, and when they had his name, I think the reaction was probably, who? I know they had his, that the WSU police had reported that there was a white Elantra out there on November 29th, but the PCA doesn't say when the officer read that information. Right. There was a bunch of tips that were coming in. There was a bunch of stuff, and I guarantee you that WSU police wasn't the only law enforcement that was given that information to be a lookout for a white Elantra. Yeah. And they just so happened to be the ones that found it. And I think that, and it's kind of like with Richard Allen. I'm not sure if you guys are covering Delphi or not. Yeah. But he went and talked to a conservation officer in 2017, and he didn't become a suspect or a person of interest until this past year. So it's kind of the same situation. He may have got his information taken, but it doesn't necessarily mean he was the focal point. So right. So when you say that they were backlogging it, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. So, and I think that information is good to know too, when we're digging into any case. It doesn't matter what case, right? There's different aspects of every case. You have nowadays the cellular data and information, and sometimes it's super reliable. Like the YNW Melly case, he was never under less than 10 cell phone towers. So the cell phone triangulation was so successful and so spot on that they could literally see him walking circles around the car. And that's why the prosecution believes that he set that case up. He set up that shooting because they believed when he was walking around the car, that was him shooting it and things like that. So sometimes where you have 10 towers, you will be able to lean on cell phone data like that. But then you have situations like this. And if you look at these 3 spots here, let me click off. These 3 here are the only cell phone towers in Moscow. So this one here is a partial tower. It's not a full-size cell phone tower. So normally a full-size tower is between 300 and 400 feet and has 360-degree coverage. This one does not have that. I believe this is the one on what's it?
Theophilus Tower.
Yeah, Theophilus Tower. So it's using the top of this tower here to have a little mini cell phone tower on top of it. And that is the coverage you're seeing there. Each one of these little overlaying spots is one of those white bars.
Mhm.
that you see on a cell phone tower. So this one here does cover King Road, with King being right here. It's right on the very edge, meaning they don't have a lot of options. They could only connect to one bar. But when you look at this other tower up here, there is no coverage on King, which makes me question the reliability around being able to see when Kohberger drove into Moscow, and the reliability of him driving past King,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Well, and that one's on a water tower, which you said that's why it only covers one side, right?
Correct.
Because it's all facing just Moscow and that interstate.
Yep.
But I mean, it seems like there's just not a lot of coverage going to that one area, which is super unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. Can you guys put up the tower that goes the furthest south
Yes.
of Moscow real quick? And is this public information that anybody with the knowledge would know?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send this link over to you, and anyone can look it up, as long as you have a rough understanding of what to look for. You're going to stick to your main 3 carriers. So like under the search bar here, you just want to stick to AT&T USA, Verizon USA, or T-Mobile USA, and then put in the address. But yeah.
So this is the I'm looking for the tower that had the Moscow residence in between it, and how far south does that tower go?
Yes, so that's
Specifically.
probably this one here that you're talking about, and this one does cover the residence. So the residence is going to be right here.
Right.
And when we zoom out, this is a true tower. We're going to get like, probably 20, 30 square miles at least. You can see this covers all the way down past Hills Gate State Park, past Lindsay Creek, and coming down into, where was it? Is that past that turnaround area? Oh yeah, it is. Okay.
It's
okay.
way past where they say he turned around, like way past.
Yep.
So if somebody turned off their, like if police were looking for the tower that was to the King Road residence, and they were looking for a specific area, how far within that one tower they can look all the way down almost to past the state? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yep. So as you travel, right? So as you would be traveling down this highway here, you would be switching from white bar to white bar as you're going past the tower. So each side is 120 degrees. So let's say you're coming out of Moscow, driving down here, you would be on this side of the tower. And as you come down here, you might have a little bit of a service interruption, and then reconnect to this side of the 120 degrees and continue on down. But you're never losing connection with that tower. So now towers have the ability where multiple phones can be uploading into that tower at once. So think of a string going from your phone, excuse me, from your phone to the tower. On one string, multiple phones will be connected to that, and it's in an order. So it'll be like cell phone 1, cell phone 2, cell phone 3, cell phone 4, all using that one data stream going up into the tower. So the whole point behind that is it's really reliable, and you won't get any hiccups once you're connected to a tower. You only start getting those hiccups once you go outside of that tower's range. So all this driving out of Moscow, coming down south, would be very reliable. The only thing that would be questionable is coming in using that highway that is the Pullman Moscow highway, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, and I think you need to mention these red towers, because you didn't really say, like, because people will look at this map and be like, oh my gosh, there's way more towers than that.
Yeah.
These are closed bands only for emergency services. Like,
they are.
Nobody can connect to them. Your phone never connects to them ever.
Yeah. So there's some information floating around out there where people believe there's like 30 towers in the Moscow area. And there is 30 towers, but not open network towers. So they aren't towers that could be used. They would not be towers that can be used to bounce a cell phone from one to the other. These are completely closed for emergency services and, helicopter, airplane, hospital, law enforcement, fire, all that stuff. So
do any of these towers that reach Moscow, do they reach Pullman?
No. I've been trying to get this. I've been trying to get that answered too. And I made him look back and forth, go between them, and they definitely don't.
So there is a tower that's in the Pullman area that reaches to Moscow, but not the other way around. So I know in the PCA, I think there's really weird wording when they're saying that Bryan Kohberger likely returned the next morning. It says that they see that his cell phone, the 84 whatever it is, 73 or whatever, is connected to a Pullman tower, and it looks like as he's connected to that tower, they're seeing signs that would prove that he was in Moscow without saying, hey, he never connected to a Moscow tower. If that makes sense.
Okay. Because I think it was the 14th is when it mentioned him connecting to a Moscow tower and him not being in Moscow.
Yeah. I don't think this is the throwaway connection that you're talking about, that 12th connection. When in the PCA, watch, now that I pointed it out, you'll see that wording, and it's really strange where it says Bryan Kohberger was connected to a Pullman cell phone tower, and it looked like he was making his way to Moscow, but they don't confirm that he connected to a Moscow tower.
Let me see.
So this is the only tower that crosses the state line, and King Road's right on the edge of it.
Yeah.
Like this outer blue one is like last legs of service right here.
Yeah. That would be a tough.
So what it says is on November 13th, 2022, the 8458 phone is consistent with leaving the area of the Kohberger residence at approximately 9 a.m. and traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to the King Road residents between 9:12 and 9:21. The phone next utilized resources that are consistent with the phone traveling back to the area of Kohberger's residence, arriving at 9:32 a.m.
Yeah, so this is the tower they're talking about right here.
Okay.
So maybe he got further away and then came back.
Yeah. So if you look at the cell phone data that they're talking about, they always say when he's connected to a Moscow tower, which if I was law enforcement or a prosecutor, I would do that too. That's going to look best for them. However, in that situation, they don't. So I just thought that was interesting, and part of the reason why we don't see them leaning a lot on the cell phone data, just with how weak this data is out here. Now, are they going to be able to lean on the GPS data? Maybe. And GPS data is a little bit different than cell phone data. And we just don't know what they're going to be able to get from those background applications. So.
Gotcha. So on the 14th, the PCA states that Kohberger connected to a tower in Moscow, but they don't believe that he was in Moscow. So based on those towers that you have, our best idea would be south of Moscow. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would have to be south. It would have to be this tower down here.
So he would be anywhere in that area, because it was a tower that connects to Moscow, but he wasn't in Moscow.
Yeah, it would have to be that one here. There is no other tower he could connect to. So
Where-
the Pullman goes over the state line, but none of the Moscow towers go over the state line, which is strange.
Can you zoom in on that towards
Yeah.
where the victim's residence is? Okay, and no, that's fine. You can zoom back out a little bit. Right there, and scroll down and to the left. A little bit more to the left. I want to see how far left that goes. It's still in that area, right? Or is this?
No. Here you can. There
I want to see where
right there.
the edge is. All right, right there.
Yeah.
All right. So here are my thoughts. These are just my opinion.
Yeah, of course.
If he was there but not in Moscow and didn't go into Moscow, he must have come up a different route, which would make sense. He doesn't want other surveillance cameras catching him going back through Moscow. And if he was in that area,
what is the main area carrier? Is it AT&T? Is it US Cellular?
They all suck in that area. So it's a toss up. It depends on if you want the best 5G, which in that area would be T-Mobile, or if you want a more reliable connection, which would be Verizon.
And they use their own towers, right? And when I know they share sometimes, but sometimes they use their own tower. But I think he had an AT&T phone, right?
Yeah, he had AT&T, and in this area, they all share these towers. There isn't one that isn't being shared by the other carriers.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in an area kind of like this in Wisconsin. It was a small little village in the bottom of, I would say, a couple hilly areas, and I had AT&T, and it sucked. I mean, I would have to drive halfway through town before I can get a phone call to go through.
Yeah,
all my buddies that had Sprint, they can make their calls, or they had US Cellular, they can make their calls, because AT&T back then, this is probably 15 years ago, wouldn't use their towers, I guess, at that time.
yeah.
I always remember you would leave the town and your phone start buzzing all your missed calls and all your missed text messages because they finally go through.
From all accounts, it sounds like that's how it is out here too.
Okay.
Unless you're right downtown. I mean, that looks like it'd have decent coverage right downtown.
Yeah, it looks pretty good coverage.
I know Vargas on Truth and Transparency's channel said she didn't have any service at all driving from Spokane until she literally was in Moscow.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting here too, I guess I haven't pointed this out. So as we're looking at this, we're looking at where they could potentially have coverage, but we're missing the fact that in order for CAS to actually be used, there has to be cell phone triangulation, which ideally is 4 towers. They can do it with 3. It just decreases the likelihood of the reliability around the location. Yeah,
it's precision. Like the more towers they have, the more precise they can be. And then with the less towers you have, and the like you were saying on these outside areas where like it's barely covering, it gets what did you talk about? The RTT? Like how
the round trip time.
Yeah, you said the further it got out, you had some numbers. Yeah, I can't remember those things, but it just, the closer you are to the tower, the more towers that are there, the more precise they can be. The less, the opposite is the opposite.
Yeah.
How is I want to say, how is the optics in that area? Do you guys know? Are they running Google already?
I'm not sure. I would be surprised if there were, just because the population here isn't a lot, and Google's MO is they usually start in the most heavily populated metro areas and then move out from there. Yeah. So unless this was some kind of hub, some kind of middle area in between one metro city to another, I would be shocked if they had it out here. And we haven't heard of anybody in that area talking about it. So
the only reason I asked is because their cameras that they're using, their footage, is really clear and crisp. For whatever internet they're using, they're getting good video. Because I have Google, and sometimes mine would be a little glitchy. I'm like, man, I have the most expensive Google you can have, and I have Google Optic. You know,
Are
Yeah.
you talking about their body cam footage?
no, their camera from like, you know, when they see the cars driving through in the neighborhoods on
Mhm.
their Ring cameras.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They have good Wi-Fi, because if you have crappy spotty Wi-Fi, it glitches, it runs slow, and the videos we've been getting, they're running smooth. So they have good Wi-Fi. I don't know if they got fiber optic, because I know back in the day, everybody used to have, you know, dishes and everything to get their, you know, internet through the satellite, because there was no optics running anywhere back in those areas.
Yeah, fiber optics are like way miles ahead better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But
So when you guys said that the precision is decreased with 3, by how much? Like, how precise are we talking? Is 4 towers, and how precise are we talking? Feet, yards, miles?
it gosh, and this is what makes this so hard and like almost like a theoretical type science. That each case is going to be a little bit different, and I can show you what I mean here. So when cast, right, and this is some of the leading experts in this, or at least they have continued training. They're up on criminal cases and the best way to manage all this information. I would assume if someone's part of the FBI cast team, they know what's going on around cell phone data and how to plot it and track it, and, you know, the kind of back end workings of it. But even when they're setting up a cast report, which is cell phone triangulation, they still send a cast agent out there to test the tower firsthand. So what they'll do is they'll call into AT&T and say, hey, AT&T, I need this 8473 number, all their data for the last 30 days. And AT&T comes back and they send it to them, and they send them something that looks like this, where they'll say, okay, so that phone at 12 p.m. was connected to this tower in Alpha Sector 1 or Alpha Sector 2. And that will give you the general side of the tower that phone's going to be connected to. And then on each distance down here, they should be cut into sections. So you have like section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they can give you a rough estimate on that. Now that should cut down the where they're at to, I mean, 1 tower is not enough. 1 tower could be a square mile or 10 square miles when you have that. But each tower you add, you're giving an additional sector and location, a sector inside of a tower, which decreases that square mileage. So in Moscow, I don't think a cast agent would even do a report based on what we're seeing in here, unless they're using geolocation, which is like that blended data that I was talking about. Because in their cast reports, it says in here that they need a minimum of 3 towers, and even with 3 towers on AT&T, they suggest that you don't use it in a court case. So that's what the 3 towers would look like here. And then I'll find that one area. I should have marked that beforehand.
Yeah, all throughout this report, it says like it's not reliable.
Yeah, right
really
here.
horrible.
So AT&T, use data cautiously during investigation, and do not rely on data for testimonies. So that when people are talking about the Kohberger cell phone data, I don't think we're going to be able to rely on that, right? And like we said in the beginning, we hope he's guilty, man, because that's scary as hell if he's not. We have a killer out there, and we have a 5th victim we're adding, you know what I mean? So I hope there's a whole bunch of evidence behind it, but unfortunately in this situation, with only having two cell phone towers. I don't see that happening with this overlap. And it's not even like it's a cell phone tower that gives coverage over here and one over here where they're, you know, coming from different sides and different angles, which gives you a more decreased location. They're right in line with each other, which is going to make it even harder. So you don't have any triangular shape.
I think with
that third
this case, his phone was off. So that's one of the main reasons why they're probably not going to use this at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they're going to go by, you know, surveillance cameras, the fingerprint.
Well, this information isn't necessarily to prove he was there that night.
Right.
This information is to show that he has a history of being in the area to show possible stalking. No, I understand that 100%. And if this gets thrown out, I mean, it doesn't really kill the case, but it definitely is something that, you know, is detrimental to the prosecution. You know, when it comes to his phone activity, though, I think the most important piece of evidence is the fact that he did turn his phone off, you know, at 2:50 and then didn't turn it on until 4:48. Yeah, I think that is probably the biggest piece of evidence. Now, what I had asked was, we know that based on documents and PCA that the radius that they had given was, I think it was like 1/3 of a mile radius around the King Road residence, as far as phones that were connecting and not connecting. Is that easy to determine, like a specific area, or is that radius given because that's the only radius that specific tower had?
No, I assume that they're actually using this tower here when they're giving that information, not the bigger cell phone tower. I think they would be using this one because there is there's a certain percentage of mistake with these. And the further you get away from the tower, the more RTT time there is, which is that round trip data time. So data coming from the tower to the phone and back to the tower, which that tells you roughly how far you are away from the tower. So that gives you what sector you're in, and then you get that from each tower, and that's how they triangulate you. So with this tower being so much closer, literally right across the way, probably, you know, maybe less than a mile even, they're using this one here. That's what I would assume with it being so close, because when we back up out of here, that other tower is way down here. You know, this is probably 5 miles away at least.
You know what I'm thinking? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that whoever did this, you know, didn't have their phone on. And if they were aware of this tower and its reach, that could be a reason why they would take their phone and turn it off a certain distance away.
Yeah.
They wouldn't show up on this tower. Is that correct? If they were 2 miles out?
Yeah. No, they wouldn't. And
what if we're missing something? What if they're using the phone service, like, right? By him turning his phone back on, because he drove so far away, our phone will log I guess I'm guessing it will, if he's roaming. Right? He should log on his phone where he was at when he started roaming and what time he was. So at that time, you'd be like, what are you doing at 5 a.m?
Yeah.
You know, your excuse can't be at home. I mean, his excuse is he was driving around. But where were you the other 2 hours that your phone was off? Coincidentally, at the same time, this quadruple homicide happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a good point.
It is a good point.
What I would say with that is what I would expect to see in these cases in a situation like that, because I think what you were saying, Daniel, with the the history, I think that's more important. If they can paint a picture that we have stalking behavior here, guaranteed, that I feel like they would be able to paint who he was and get the jury bought in 100%. And it doesn't even have to have anything to do with the night of the crime. But in order to do that, we need some sort of reliability. And like what you were saying, Big Blue, with roaming, yes. And what I would expect to see with that then is backup warrants or searches into his app data. So you would expect to see them asking for his Google data, his Apple Maps data. Which other ones do it? Literally every application has
weather apps.
Yeah, has location services,
shopping apps,
Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if they're pulling that data, right, and maybe we thought that they were looking for those accounts to see who he was looking at, and really it could have been his background app data.
Oh wait, does Spotify track location?
Yeah, Spotify tracks location
because they were requesting app data for Spotify. What if he had some way to listen to Spotify not on his phone, like on a tablet, and that's why they wanted that second IMEI? Like, what if he turned his phone off, but he was out driving and they were thinking maybe he was listening to music?
Yeah.
And like that would help track through the background app data?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, Spotify is on my tracking. I was just looking through it because there's so many different apps on here that track your location. I mean, you're talking
TurboTax,
Twitter, Twitch, Trovo, TikTok, Snapchat, literally every app that everybody uses. You know what I mean? That gives roughly a location data unless you have all those turned off. Like I keep all those turned off. So it wouldn't work in that situation. And maybe he did the same thing. We just don't know. But
it's crazy how it does that, because it does. Like I know sometimes I'd be at work and I'd be like fumbling through my Snapchat, and then I'll accidentally turn on the map and you just see little people's body, like the little figures standing all over town because it's telling me where they're at.
Yeah,
like, I didn't even know where that person is, but now I do, because they're not gonna move. They're asleep,
Yeah,
that's horrible. I don't know why anybody turns that on. Turn it off now.
Yeah,
turn it off.
And what's interesting is that data doesn't require towers.
Nope.
So when you go into a mall or a store or something, and next thing you know, you pull out your phone to make a call and you see an ad for that store, that's because your phone is touching with their router real quick and letting your phone know, hey, you're within the area of this store, and sending that information over to you. Well, in order to do that, it has to locate you. It has to place you, not down to the inch, but in the general area. They probably know you're within 50 feet of that area. So that same data can be used to create a geolocation map where they use a blended services between router connection, Bluetooth, and cell phone data.
But so you just said something interesting. Hold on, Blue. You just said something very interesting. So I wasn't aware that a router could get could record the touching of another device. I thought that the router was a one-way deal. It opens up. It says, it's open for connection. You have to have a password if there is one. If not, you could just connect to it. And if you don't connect to it, there's not some sort of documentation of that.
Yeah, you're thinking.
Can a regular router get that or do that?
You're thinking right. So like a personal router, what you guys have at your house, no, it will not do that. It is one way, and there are security services within it that is not just going to pick random people up off the street that are driving by. When I say router, I'm talking more like your Starbucks, McDonald's, Burger King, these places that offer free Wi-Fi to their guests, Walmart's, Hy-Vee, any of these store locations that give you services in store. As you're driving by, if their service is strong enough, you're going to pick that up, and they're going to be able to pull that information through the applications that we're able to run in the background data of your phone and say, hey, yeah, this dude was here at this time. We see that he connected to this.
Well, I think that's a good thing to bring up because that whole college. I mean, I've been to university before, and they have free Wi-Fi everywhere.
Everywhere.
So it should pick up the Wi-Fi from the college, depending how close you are to the library, the main school buildings, because they provide free Wi-Fi for students.
Yeah.
What if the router was given by the school? I don't know why they would, but if it was a school issued router, would that have the ability to? Is that more like our school router is more similar to a router that would be at your home, or is it more closely related to the routers that would be at a store?
It would be on a per router basis, but if you have an open network, which I doubt, when you have a party of 150 people, like we're hearing could have happened the night before, you don't want 150 people using your service to where you can't use it and your phone's not working. So I would assume, like, just using that as an example, that they probably had a password protected router, and only some of them, right, had the ones that lived there, maybe boyfriends, girlfriends, family, things like that, would have that password to connect. Then no, it wouldn't just randomly pick people up that were driving by.
But within that area, they're really close to the university, like you mentioned, and also businesses, like, just that main street that you get to their home from. There's tons of businesses up there. Like they got in the car and were at home within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it's super, super close.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think of what businesses or the university routers or anything that has an open network that he would have passed by
that
to get
he could
there.
have connected to.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a gas station in A&W about 2 blocks away.
More than likely, they probably have some kind of services that he could have connected to. And that could be what we're seeing with the Spotify request, with the warrant for Spotify. It's very possible.
Or it could be the times that he was stalking them, the Spotify would have been on.
Yeah.
Instead of his other stuff. And they could.
That's the back.
If it was him, I mean, we had to say allegedly. We don't want to go down that ship again. We've been down some ships that people try to sink us before for stuff we say, so we try to stay safe.
He's innocent until proven guilty, and I think it's important to remember that, even if evidence looks damning. Which, in my opinion, there's some things that are like, whoa. Like, I see why he stands out as a suspect. Like, there's like the DNA, the touch DNA, and clearly his phone was off during that time, and he was out driving. Like, that's sketchy. It can appear very sketchy.
It can.
There's also innocent explanations, where somebody could be in the wrong place, wrong time. But I don't know. I don't know.
In my opinion, I do not think this is a strong case. I don't think it's anywhere near a slam dunk case. And I'm nervous that let's just say he's guilty and law enforcement didn't do a thorough enough investigation. And now that the court has started and they're like, oh shoot, this is not looking strong enough. So now they're trying to figure things out and hurry up and get some additional evidence and investigate and continue warrants and things that should have came out way earlier, probably before the arrest even. If he is guilty, then it might not stick. Now, if he is innocent, we gave the potential killer all this time to do who knows what, right? And I don't know if you guys have watched that recent video we had come out around the 4chan theory, but for a long time, for the whole 90 days, I didn't touch that theory because based on everything that I was hearing, it sounded really far out there, far out there. And I was worried I wasn't going to be able to tie any of that into any part of reality. But then I started looking into it just recently and come to find out that all those 4chan posts are before the PCA, are before Kohberger, like weeks before any of that information came out. And it is very detailed information. Somebody would only have that information with intimate knowledge. Could it be Kohberger? Sure, it could have been him on 4chan, but could it be someone else? Absolutely. So You know, it just makes me wonder, and it makes me worried for the integrity
What
of this
information did they have?
investigation.
But it couldn't be Kohberger unless he has intimate knowledge of the fraternities, the people that the victims were associating with. Like, he would have to know names and specific details. Like, literally, he had to have been there.
Yeah.
To know some of the things that were written in that.
Yeah. What was written? What was it about?
Giving a breakdown of the crime and how it aligns with some of the surrounding audio that we have from the police, Banfield audio, police audio, and how the theory shows that the 4 running people, right? Have you guys seen that from the reflection in Banfield when those 3 or 4 dudes are being talked to by the cop, and it shows a reflection of 4 people running by the light?
Yeah.
Well, there is pre-pictures and post pictures of the supposed crime in that theory, where it shows them with 19 minutes running towards the house, 19 minutes later running away from the house. And then I don't have it pulled up on here, but
well, the first post was a cryptic post that was essentially a poem, and it said something about gardens and like a river, and you might find a gnome, and it had coordinates. And the coordinates supposedly go towards like Garden City, like the Palouse River near Garden City. And then there were more posts talking about, like, you know, the crime scene, talking about certain people in the fraternity, the fight that supposedly Xana and Ethan and another fraternity member got in that night. Many things detailing what happened. There were details in there that were not released to the public, that were in the PCA, that they were writing pre-PCA release, pre-Kohberger on 4chan.
Well, I can tell you this, that I can tell you this, that I have sources that live out there. The information that was in the PCA was being leaked out, not by law enforcement, not by anybody like that, and more so by I don't want to say it was leaked out. That's my assumption. I do know that the information that was later to be released on the PCA was going around. I don't know where it came from. And I think that it was to, there was a lot of information that wasn't coming out at the time. There was a lot of secrecy and things of that nature. And so I know that some of the stuff that was in the PCA had been going out as early as a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of days after the incident.
We're going to have to look at the dates again. So when would you say the leaks started? Do you know at all?
I can tell you that people were aware of what was in the PCA day 2.
Day 2 after the crime?
November 14th.
Okay. I mean, it kind of
maybe November 15th.
It's a small town. It's a small town, and something extremely tragic happened, to college students. It makes sense for rumors to be going around, and we know for a fact that people were in that house before the police.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, it does make sense.
Yeah.
But there's just some odd things in it that we were.
No, I'm referring to what Dylan said about seeing a guy in a mask.
Yeah. Yeah,
that was that information. Dylan didn't hide that information. That information came out day 1. She told police that there was somebody in the house, that they had seen somebody, that there was a masked person, and I know that information was given to some people as early as at least the 15th.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It makes sense. If you're not hiding that information, right, and it's before the cops have talked to you and you're a college kid, I mean, I would have been telling everybody. I wouldn't have held that back, I would have been telling everybody.
And, I think it's important to respect the secrecy of a case in the beginning like that.
Until the arrest.
Until the arrest, it should be kept close to the vest. All the information absolutely should be, so that nobody's interfering. But at this point... Police. Yeah, by police. But at this point, I feel like it should be way more open than this.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. I always say that, we got to leave some for trial. That way, because they want to give him a fair trial if it is him or if it's not him. And the other thing is some of the information that we can't get or see is the crime scene photos, crime scene, you know. And I respect that, because if I was their family, I wouldn't want that out there.
Yeah, no, I don't think that should be out there whatsoever. Absolutely not. You know, I came across John Bonet crime scene photos, and I can't get that out of my head, man. I wish I never saw those. I wish they never posted them.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, there are certain places, certain states that they put everything out there and people get a fair trial. You know, when it comes to, you know, the evidence that's out there, I feel that if it's, what's what I'm looking for, if it's like a test or evidence that's out there, I think that it should be, as long as it's like not graphic or pictures, but let's just say you have blood DNA on a window pane. You know, I think that there should be that transparency where you would be able to see the test and see the results without the narrative. So without somebody saying that, oh, this blood was here because this person did this, or this blood wasn't there because of that, and that. So as long as it's just the test, the results, no narrative from which side it's coming from, I don't see how it's going to harm the case.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And transparency. Oh, go ahead.
And when it comes to like, you know, the gag order, the part that I think should be loosened up is the misinformation aspect. If there is something that people are saying that this case involves this or that, you know, I don't see how, you know, that would hurt, you know, Bryan Kohberger's case, if that's not even an angle that his defense is going down and it's just completely false. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I'm somebody who, like she said, I believe that it should be kept secret for the integrity of the arrest while they're gathering evidence. But as soon as somebody is arrested, I believe that everything should be transparent. You know, there's a whole bunch of studies of other countries where they don't have the same kind of secrecy around government, law enforcement, things like that. And overall, when people, us people, feel included or trust or faith in law enforcement, it's because they're transparent on these topics, you know. So I think it would fix a lot of these issues that we're seeing. Because right now, all we really have to do is speculate in theory. And there's no way for everybody who's invested in this case to not have some kind of connection to the victims in some way. With all the pictures and everything that we're seeing, we draw connections. You know, we're what's it called? We're pack animals, you know, and we make connections with everybody. That's just something we automatically do. So just keeping everything secret, I think, just feeds the beast, honestly. And it's only going to hurt the prosecution and the defense.
Well, and it gets more salacious. It's like telephone, you know, it's going to get more and more out there. You know, the more people that talk about it, the more, you know, it goes down through the grapevine. So I think it ends up just hurting the information that is actually out there, the narrative that is actually out there, rather than having like facts to like go back to, like, oh wait, no, that's BS because right here it says this.
I think it's one narrative we try to stay to is the facts.
That's the problem with this case, though. There's so little of them.
We try to. I'm a very what's the word I'm looking for? I look for evidentiary. If there's something that there's truth behind it, there's some evidence pointing in that direction, I'll look at it. You know, I'm open to change my mind or any of those things. I don't stick to a narrative, like with the, for instance, the Richard Allen case. I'm not sure if you guys are, you know, covering Delphi, but you know, when the PCA came out, I was like, yeah, this guy's it. And he puts himself there. You know, he's wearing the clothes. There's people that have seen him. The timeline's so tight, it can't be anybody else. And now that there's all this other stuff, I still think that he's involved. You know, that timeline, it's kind of hard to look past. But, you know, do I think that there's possibility of more involved? I think there could be. You know, Elvis Fields and his statements, they're pretty concerning. Yeah,
they're bad.
Very concerning.
So those things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I saw you actually. I was watching part of the show the other night when you were going over some of the Delphi stuff. I'm trying to remember which one it was, but you were reacting to Patrick Westfall's interview with Sleuth Intuition, I think it was. And we've watched little parts of it. But when we watched the very first one, okay, so we made the Vinlander video. So right away, when the memorandum came out, we were like, dude, Richard Allen's it. Like, we were the same way. We thought Richard Allen was it. We were laughing at the memorandum, like, this is so dumb. Like, this is so out there. And then I started reading it, and I was trying to convince him, like, okay, there's something here. And he's like, no, I don't want to see it. Get it away from me. And then he started looking into it a little bit randomly on his own. He was like, there's Odinists there. I just found proof. And I was like, wait, what? And he ended up showing it to me. And then I got deeper into the memorandum and I saw Vinlanders. Okay. Yeah. I was like, what is Vinlanders and Firm 22? Like, what? So they're literally saying they're part of a group. Like, they're naming the supposed cult. So I go look it up. And I came across so much of Vinlanders is it used to be the Hammerskins is who the original founder was a part of, which is a skinhead group. And he and a few other people ended up kind of, getting away from that and forming their own group, which is the Vinlanders. And they started recruiting all over the country. So when Patrick Westfall says they didn't recruit, that is a lie. There's proof of recruiters going around the country. And you have South Carolina chapters, you have Florida chapters, you have Arizona chapters. It's literally all over the nation. It's everywhere. It's heavy in prisons. It's absolutely everywhere because they recruited. Yeah. And they turned tons of little skinhead gangs into Vinlanders. And there's so many atrocious crimes that these people have committed, like so many. And you can even look at January 6th pictures and see Vinlanders. You'll see them wearing funny things like Viking horns, but they also have a lot of the tattoos too, like the Volksknot and other things, which is like the little triangles all intersecting. But it was literally first originally formed in Indiana. That's where it originates from. And I started looking more into the people mentioned in the memorandum. And when I first listened to Patrick Westfall's interview, because I already knew, like, pretty sure in my mind that he was a Vinlander and that Brian Holder was somehow involved with it too. And when he said, he confirmed, I was like, he straight up confirms it. Yeah. He talks about how they were running things. Yeah. So I know for a fact that exists and that's there. And I wanted to relay that information to you to look into it, because I don't believe it's a cult. No. I believe it's a gang. Yeah. And they're some of them are pretty organized. Very organized.
Yeah, very organized. They have clubs. They rankings.
Run with bikers too. Yeah. In some instances, but I think that's important to look at, because the Flora fires happened right before that with the little, the 4 black young girls, and then this happened, and they say it was because one of the moms was dating outside of the race. And I heard a bunch of people saying they wouldn't murder white girls. Like, that doesn't make sense. But when you look at the past crimes of these people, they absolutely would. Like, there's a case in Arizona where a white girl was walking with her black boyfriend down the street, and they come by and shot her up.
Yep.
For no reason. Her, not him. Her. Yeah. So I think that's a possibility when we're talking about maybe, some initiates, maybe putting in work to get attention away from Flora, or, there's various things. And maybe they picked them because they saw, like, supposedly there's a connection between the Flora girls and Libby, that some of them went to school together or were friends or something like that. And somebody saw that and they were like, yeah, them.
Yeah. We just need
because
the right
their
person.
Their mom is, one of their moms is a degenerate anyway, them.
Yeah, Rick Snay. We had Rick Snay. He's from Logansport, Indiana, and he covers Delphi. He has a channel called Delphi After Dark. He's got a friendly relationship with Tony Klein, Keegan Klein's father, and has talked to him multiple times. He had mentioned that the Villanders were also more of a gang than anything else.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
They're
it's crazy
drug
that you bring
driven.
up the same.
Well, because when that was mentioned, I tried looking up other content creators that had talked about it, and I couldn't find anything. So I started just digging into it myself because I really wanted to understand like where they got this name from, because I had never heard of it before. And I found a lot, and how heavy it is in the Illinois and Indiana area. It's very heavy in these areas. But yeah, they are 100% more of a gang, unless you want to go down the rabbit hole of they all have this like religious ideology, that they're all following.
That makes them more dangerous.
That makes them more dangerous, yes. But they don't, with a cult, you would need them to, like, when you think of cult, okay, you think of people like going to a compound and being cut off from their family, okay? They're not allowed to talk to anybody else, and they're following this religion, and they're not allowed to have like their own thoughts, their own identities. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's what's necessarily happening here. It's a gang. They put in work. They are a part of criminal activities. And I have found, which I've heard rumors, okay, that all these people, Elvis Fields and the three others, were all using amphetamines together, okay? Well, I found an arrest with one of the people. Like, I don't know if you want me to mention the name or not. It's Messer. He actually was arrested in, I think it was Rushville. I can send it to you, but it was with amphetamines, and they were using counterfeit money, which is originally how they got caught. Like the cops caught onto them because they tried to use $100 counterfeit bill. They go to search the house and they find lots of drugs. They find syringes. They find kids there around it. Bad situation. There was like 5 people arrested in that situation.
Yeah.
So I that just gave more weight to that rumor that they were all using together, which would make sense because Patrick tries claiming he doesn't know Elvis.
Yeah.
Right.
What if he was like a druggie around in that area? Like they all lived in, like they all messed around in Rushville.
God, what a bunch of amateurs. Everyone knows you don't counterfeit 50s or 100s.
So we got some more further updates I wanted to cover in the main shooting. So the suspect has been identified as Robert Card, 40 years of age, born April 4th, 1983. Here's a picture of him. This is Robert Card.
Where's the...
So just he's still on the loose. I believe he has.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe he has ditched his vehicle already. I have a picture of that.
So I saw somebody mentioned in the chat there were 3 people. Is there only one confirmed?
I saw that in the chat too. I was not able to confirm that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I brought it up. My bad.
Nah, Boo, you're at fault. You're gonna get.
It's good to know.
It is good.
I would rather think 3 and have it be 1 than think 1 and have it be 3. You know?
Right.
That's true. That's true.
For right now, what we know, it's just one person, guys.
Yeah, it's one person still in the loose. I think it's actually up to like 20 people now. I'm not sure if that's true.
Oh, geez.
Oh, no, man.
22.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh.
Why can't they catch this guy yet?
Yeah. I mean, catching wouldn't.
The thing about Maine is, I have a good friend that's from over there. It's really not as densely populated. So if you ran to the woods, I mean, good luck finding him for a little bit. I don't know where he went, but it's a really wooded area. My buddy told me
this
you don't want to get lost in the woods
terrifying.
out there.
It is terrifying. It is.
It's gonna be like a Cavalsante situation, but this guy's
Yeah.
armed, running around,
Yep.
actually killing people, running in the
Yeah.
woods.
I mean, if I hope it turns into that, you know, I hope they get a controlled perimeter where they can catch him and get him
well, it
so that
sounds
he
like they
doesn't go
don't.
free. I know, that's why I would rather have them lock down that city and control the perimeter and get this guy than
Yeah, they need to pull
him
the
be out there.
people out though, man. I just hope they see him and shoot him.
In order to get the people out, they gotta come out of their house though. That's
Yeah.
scary. I would hunker down. Terrifying situation, man.
Yeah, this is definitely horrific.
Did you read when it started? How long has this been going on?
Let's see. I'll see.
It's in Lewiston, Maine.
And it seems like it's across town.
Jeez.
Like it's not like right next to each other. According to this map, you have the bowling alley up here, and then the bar and grill. That's quite a bit of distance away.
Yeah, it is.
And then the other site, they said a Walmart distribution center, but I don't see that on the map. So I don't know.
Yeah. Have they found anything else out about him, like background, belief system, religion, anything like that?
I saw on Facebook that they claimed he was a 20-year veteran of the military.
Oh,
But
geez.
I haven't confirmed that yet.
Scary.
Yeah, that's way scarier if he has military training. Holy cow.
What was the name again?
Robert Card.
Let's see before they lock down all his sites.
So
I tried to do that earlier too.
do they have an estimated area that they think he's in now?
I don't think so.
They're still active. Did that just say 80?
80 people injured? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, he's been arrested. He's been arrested.
Oh, man.
Yay.
I am blown away
Wait.
that they arrested him.
Wait, he's just he surrendered?
Yeah.
Probably. It's either that or they're going to end you, man.
Yeah, the video I'm seeing right now, they're arresting him.
I'm surprised.
I'm
I was surprised
shocked.
that they arrested Cavalsante. So
Yeah, I was shocked in that one too.
those police had to be tired, fed up, and over it, man. That's when you see people start getting trigger happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he tried coming out and complaining that they stepped on him.
I mean, if I was him and I didn't have a way out, I probably would complain too, you know.
Yeah.
What other options do you have?
Hey, Blue, see if you can find this. This was 13 minutes ago. Apparently, it's still up and going. He lives in Bowdoin Center, Maine, single. See if you find his profile. And if you do, send it to me. And that way I can see if there's anything crazy on his background from there.
Nice.
Oh, wow. So Robert Card has been previous arrest record for
no.
CP and is a registered offender, making it illegal for him to possess a firearm.
Ugh.
That is crazy. Normally, you don't see predators violent in this manner. That's really uncommon.
Is it?
Yeah, statistically.
Man, they need to change the wording of that. It said over 80 dead and injured.
Yeah,
And I
that's
was like,
what I saw.
yeah, I was like, whoa. But
I mean, that's
No.
how many people have been affected. So, but I mean, how many passed away, I think is
It's saying over 20 at least, right? 20, 22, something like that.
22.
22.
Oh yeah,
Man.
he does look like a different person in those mug shots.
Yeah.
That's weird. Like super different.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Is it it's just the hair, isn't
That
it?
doesn't look like him.
Yeah, that
I don't know who that is.
That's not, I don't think that's him.
No.
okay.
Somebody made a mistake somewhere.
I was about to say because that does not look like him.
Here come the conspiracies.
100%. 22 passed, 50 to 60 injured. Sheesh. Jesus, that's insane. His address is 941 Meadow Road, Bowden, Maine. Born on April 4th, 1983.
His Facebook
Incidents
shut down already.
Oh man, they were quick on that. Jeez.
It says here he is recognized as a trained firearms instructor and believed to have connections to the Army Reserve based in Saco, Maine. Recent revelations have shown that that card has been grappling with mental health challenges. These challenges include hearing voices that he had made threats towards the National Guard base located in Saco, Maine. Additionally, it has come to light that during the summer of 2023, Card was admitted to a mental health facility where he stayed for 2 weeks before being arrested. Regarding his mobility, Card was last seen driving a white Subaru Outback registered in Maine with number 9246 PD. The car stands out with its black front bumper. The general public is strongly advised to exercise caution as Robert is deemed to be armed and potentially dangerous.
Yeah, that's a dangerous combination, man. So we're talking CP, firearms training, military background, man,
And mental
hearing
health.
voices. Yeah.
He is 40. He's 40 years old. Jeez, that's insane.
Scary,
That's
dude.
pretty old to snap like that.
Yeah, for mental health. It could be trauma induced though, you know. I think that could probably come into how his military past went, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably been through it, and I don't know, man. Who knows? Maybe he's been on medication and stopped taking it. I don't know.
You know, I knew a guy who he's a police officer, but I think he was with the school district, and he ended up going into the military and being an MP, and then he ended up going overseas. And when he came back, he was stationed out in, I want to say it was Fort Hood, could be wrong. Might be another one, but it was here in Texas, and apparently he lost it. He flashed back to where he was, and these kids that were running, according to his story, he thought that they were, the enemy, and he jumped out of his unit and took them out.
Yeah. I think I remember that. How long ago was that? Like 8 years ago or something?
Oh man, it was probably about 8 to 12, somewhere.
Yeah.
Between there. Yeah, it was. I want to say. Yeah, it could have been about, because I want to say it was between 2010 and 12, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And that was, it was just, it was crazy.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I was not saying 40's old. I was saying that 40's old, like if he had schizophrenia, like the oncoming of it is normally like mid-20s. You see a lot of mass shooters are younger.
Yeah.
So that's all I was saying with that. Now the whole PTSD angle, or there's other factors obviously, but 40's totally not old.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's like usually at that point you're set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you got a life going for you, unless you're having like a midlife crisis or something. I don't know.
I've seen people get schizophrenia later on in life. And
really?
It's sad when it does happen because they live the full life and then they just start going crazy.
Yeah, that is
it's pretty sad. Like I've dealt with mental patients, and the schizophrenia ones are a little out there, man. It's like you don't want to turn your back on them because some of them, like I said, they've been in the military. When they snap, they sure do know how to take people out.
Oh yeah. I think anybody that has what would you call it, a schizophrenic episode. I had a buddy of mine, and they literally changed to a completely different person. And I forget how old he was. I think like 29, 30, something like that. And it happened at a party, and he just flipped. He was everybody we knew, you know, everyone that we hung out with for years and years and years. And when it hit him out of nowhere. And he was a completely different person, fighting everybody, fighting cops, ended up getting like 3 felonies, super dangerous, didn't have any background training in military or anything like that. But the fact that he was just a completely different person made him dangerous, you know, and luckily he was able to get all those charges reduced by getting on meds and everything. But when someone has a schizophrenic episode, it's just a completely different person. I'd be terrified of anybody, especially someone who has gun training, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, it may happen later in life, but typically it's earlier. It's mid-20s usually.
Yeah.
But there are obviously going to be rare cases where it happens outside of that time range.
It's usually after that frontal lobe develops, or right at the end of the frontal lobe developing, which is, you know, mid to late 20s. But yeah, if it's drug induced, one of the chatters that said usually drug induced, if later, absolutely. And that's just as terrifying is drug induced psychosis.
We had a guy in our town in high school that they called the Pumpkin Man. And he dropped too much acid at one point, and he literally was like forever in a hallucination.
Jeez.
It doesn't look like he's been arrested. I think that was something fake.
Oh no.
Oh no, man. Why would somebody post something fake like that?
Yeah, I was gonna say that Maine, I don't think there's any big metropolitan that has huge buildings like that. I mean, most of them are small little towns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe they arrested the wrong person, you know?
He's saying the landscape doesn't even look right, though.
Yeah, I think it was just
oh.
somebody trying to
It was
get
like-
their Twitter moved around or Facebook.
It looks
I'll
like
be
they're
right back, guys.
They're videotaping from like a 20-story building.
Yeah.
And I never been to Maine, but I've never heard of any big cities out there that have those kind of
Right.
buildings.
Yeah.
I always hear, I always see the videos of everybody's eating lobsters outside these little shacks and nice houses, but nothing.
No metro buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been to Maine. That's like one state I've never even driven through.
What's Maine's capital?
I don't remember. I've never been there.
Someone
I
ought
don't
to
know.
know in the chat.
J Ray will probably spout it off.
Maine's capital. Oh, there's a press conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, Maine.
Is it Bangor? Somebody put Bangor. That's where my friend lived. I don't remember if it was the capital or not.
That's the
Bangor?
capital is Bangor?
Bangor, Maine.
Augusta.
Augusta?
Yeah.
Because in Bangor, it used to be an old military base.
Augusta, Georgia? What
Augusta
about
has some big buildings. Only a few, though. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories. Then you have one that looks like
Yeah.
it's 10 stories.
They're not skyscrapers by any means, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like 4-story, 5-story. Yep, look, J Ray and other
Maybe
people.
I've seen a couple of videos from I would say it's at least a 10 or 8-story building, so maybe it's a 5-story. But
Yeah.
if that video is fake, I mean that's just misleading everybody.
That's
That'd be
super
horrible.
crappy to do.
It's super crappy for the person who got labeled as that guy.
Well, it's super crappy for people who thought, oh, we're safe for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
100% true.
Yeah.
see.
Scary stuff.
I want to look up what the area looks like. I'm just going to pull it up on Google Earth.
Yeah.
So that way we're not bamboozled or lied to again.
Bamboozled.
Man, I wish I was still in wireless. If I was in wireless, I don't think I could resist not pulling the information of this case. So it's probably good I'm not.
Yeah.
I look at this cast report and they have to do a lot of work, man. They have to do a lot of work. And in the wireless industries, all it is a login and you get all this information. You don't have to go.
You didn't mention that, how they have to build the map and stuff. They can't just access the pre-existing wireless maps.
Yeah.
So you're saying per case, they have to build a map of that area.
Per case,
No.
they have to build their own map based on those sectors that we saw and how far the RTT is. And then they have to show their triangulation on the map. And then they have to drive there and verify it by doing drive-throughs, essentially, where you just drive all over the place and then verify your service as you're driving, to make sure it's reliable, that the connection is doing what you're seeing it doing on the report.
Well, it's like a pretty big city.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they were on opposite ends of town. I don't know which one was
Yeah.
the last one.
I think you're right. I think it was just outside of town on each one. One was north and one was south or something.
Yeah. Let's see. That's weird. I guess
After
this
all
is the
this-
distribution.
Daniel,
Look at
you guys, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can answer after this if you want, but I wonder, have you seen the body cam footage of the frat boys like being talked to about peeing on the house?
I saw part of it. I haven't seen it all.
What? So it sounds like they were for sure. What do you
Right.
think that could be?
Probably
Like, what would be a reason for that?
some stupid dare or dumb, just frat kids being dumb drunk kids. Could there be some sort of, I don't know, maybe they don't like the attention that this is bringing, but that's pretty selfish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I get it, but at the end of the day, somebody, justice needs to be served. Somebody's,
Yeah.
Sister, daughter, brother, son were taken, and justice needs to be served. And I just find it super disrespectful, but those things happen, and it's crazy how you'll have something tragic happen or something serious happen, and how just some idiot people just go out and do stupid stuff to the property. It happens, but some people just weren't raised right.
It's happened here before. I mean, look at one of the most famous ones that I can think of was here in SA, Ozzy Osbourne trying to pee on the animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's true, men love peeing on things, but I think that it's resentment, like you're saying. Actually, that was my theory on it, is that they didn't like the increased security they did on campus and stuff, and they didn't like all the attention, all the questions being asked. It probably messed up their college experience a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
I think, for me, it's changed a little bit. Like I was saying earlier, I didn't know about the 4chan theory until about a week ago when we first started researching to record. And in my opinion, I don't know if Kohberger's guilty, but if he's innocent, this is a valid theory. It's very possible. I have no idea if he is or not, but if he's guilty, obviously it doesn't matter. And I think it depends on which direction the case goes, whether we find that he's guilty or find that he's innocent, will change the reasoning behind why they're doing that. You know what I mean?
One thing I want to bring up is when I was digging a little bit more into the Sigma Chi fraternity, there's a case, and I think it's San Jose, California.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah.
It's horrible. And the family has been begging for something to be done for, I think it's like over a decade at this point. They found one of the boys, I think he was an initiate, like I think he was being hazed, hanging in the basement from a pipe. And it was basically made to look like he unalived himself. But the family the whole time has maintained that there's no way, and they feel like it's a cover up, and that the frat boys covered it up. That they are the ones who killed him, and nothing has been done about it for over a decade. And if you want me to send you like details on the case, there's like a whole website and everything. I can, But
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
probably going to cover it here soon too. And I think it's important to look at that because fraternities are more than just a college party house.
Yeah.
You know, they're connections that stay with you for the rest of your life. You are loyal to the people in the frat. You keep secrets for people in the frat. Like, there's more to it. So I think it is possible.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying. Likely, no. Possible, yes.
Yeah.
You know, when it
Yeah.
comes to the frat thing, though, like how many students would have to be involved or would know about this, would cover it up? And like when it comes to people being at the scene and people are saying they're cleaning up the scene, you know, the police officers had requested shrinks because of how gruesome the scene was. And these are people that are trained in seeing things like this, who have seen, you know, probably fatality accidents and, you know, other bodies that were, you know, gone through some traumatic incidences. So I just find it hard that multiple people would know this and not one would freak. You know, not one would break down, not one would tell the police, not one would say, hey, you know, I don't want to be a part of this. You know, and so that's the part that kind of makes me wonder about that. And if you go and watch so Hunter Johnson is the guy who's been alleged to have been the guy that called 911. You know, we've heard about that for a while. It's been almost basically almost confirmed at this point. Not yet, but almost. And if you go listen to his speech at the Celebration of Life, that boy saw something, and he is in trauma still. I mean, you know, the way he's acting, the way he's speaking, his shaking, his stuttering, you know, the inability to even look up, you know, those things are all signs of trauma. And from what I understand, he had a brief look at the scene. So, you know, that's kind of where I think of like multiple people being involved in something like this, unless all of them are psychopaths that have no feelings and don't care. I find it hard for it to be multiple people to that magnitude.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the whole frat. I think it would be
Right.
maybe one person who had a serious problem with maybe one or two of the people, and then another. Like I think honestly, I think two. If I had to guess, one person who had an issue.
If Kohberger isn't.
If Kohberger isn't the guy,
Mhm.
it would.
But there was a lot of people
Interesting.
there that night, supposedly, when this altercation occurred. So there would have been a lot of folks that had knowledge of the incident. You know, and you know, how many, you know, where do these frat persons live? Are they do they live at the Sigma Chi house?
Yeah.
If so, you know, was there any evidence of somebody coming back in? Was there blood found there the next day? And are these other fraternity brothers going to hide that, knowing the gruesome, you know, passing that occurred just across the street? You know, those are the questions that I have. I mean, at the end of the day, I believe, wasn't Ethan Sigma Chi?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would find it hard to believe that he wouldn't have a really good friend there either that would back him up or say something or come up with something outside of the fraternity and be like, hey, you know, that guy was my friend. You know, I know that Hunter Johnson was his best friend, but, you know, something to that nature. Like, hey, you know, me and him were tight. We were cool. We did all our fraternity stuff together. You know, there was this occurred, you know, and as fortunate as it is, if there is, let's just say, some sort of argument that occurred that night in Sigma Chi, that doesn't necessarily mean that those persons committed this crime either. I mean, if we go and look at Richard Allen, and, you know, every day that passes, it appears that Keaton Klein had nothing to do with that case. You know, and that guy had a lot of crap on him. And so, you know, and I get, you know, the theories and the thoughts. It's just, for me though, when I look at the entire picture, I would hate to make a victim of somebody else by saying something and people start looking at them in an awkward eye, especially if they had nothing to do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which
Absolutely.
is why I wouldn't name anybody, but I think that there's a possibility that they
There's
would
more to
not.
it.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
wouldn't tell everyone there. They would hide it, and if other people did know, they would somehow make them complicit in the crime, to where they would threaten them that if you tell anybody, your life is ruined. You're going down too.
See, the thing
I
is,
think there's many ways that can be manipulated
Right.
to make somebody feel like they can't talk.
with those
Right.
theories, why isn't Bryan Kohberger singing to the top of his lungs that he's innocent? Why isn't he on every news channel saying it wasn't me, I was framed?
He can't.
Yeah.
He can't.
But since the beginning, he should have. He should have been saying since day one. Instead of
Yeah.
the first thing he said when he was arrested was anybody else arrested. I mean, everybody says, well, he's thinking about his family, but if he knew he's getting charged for murder, and I know my family had nothing to do with it, why would I be worried about them? I'd be worried more about, like, I didn't do this. I'm innocent. I've seen hundreds of videos when people are getting arrested, getting sent to jail, and they did it, and they're saying that they didn't do it. This guy's silent. Just ask,
Yeah.
was anybody else arrested? That's the only reason why.
I think that throws a lot of people off, that exact thing that you're talking about. But the one thing that I would question is screaming, you know, on top of the rooftops that you're innocent, the best thing for his legal defense? Because I don't think it is. And I think that personally, if I were in his shoes, right, and I have no idea what it's like to be in a situation like that, but I think if I were in his shoes, I would probably think, okay, how am I going to do this? Step 1, step 2, step 3, if I am innocent. And step 1 is getting rid of these charges, right? Being proven innocent. That's number one, most important over the rest of society seeing me as innocent. So when it comes to that, I always wonder if, you know, maybe he's doing the right thing by staying silent in that situation. I don't know for sure because I'm not an attorney, but I feel like that could be why.
Well,
You know,
Or maybe.
you don't really hear criminal defendants coming out and saying they're innocent ever. Like, I can't think of one. Like, did Alex Murdaugh come out and do a statement when he was
like
arrested and in
Karen
prison?
Reed.
Like, because from the moment we heard about
Melanie.
Kohberger, he was in prison or
Yeah.
jail
Yeah,
or whatever. He was in
but
custody.
Murdaugh did say he was not there until
Yeah.
he had a
had all
Snapchat
that
video
time.
proving. Yeah, he had the
He had a
Snapchat
year.
video proving he was there.
Yeah.
You know, as far as why I think he asked if anybody else was arrested, I think it has more to do with the, you know, accomplice aspect. You know, there's multiple avenues to the crime, and you know, you have the crime that was committed, and if his father or parents were implicit in it or had knowledge of it, you know, moving him from that area to Pennsylvania would be a crime on his own. Harboring him in their house and with knowledge that he committed these murders is another crime. So I think that's why he's asking, like, hey, did you charge my family with more, you know, with some crimes there, with some charges?
Yeah,
But
that's good.
Yeah.
you
That
know,
makes
so I understand that aspect. Blue, you had something else that you were going with that I wanted to talk about. You said it was that, and you said something else. Why isn't he singing? There we go. I will be honest, you know, if I had a family member that was accused of something, whether they did it or not, you know, the best advice that I could give them is to be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you know, anybody that's in law enforcement, will, you know, if their friends say, hey, if I've ever been in a jam or something like that, the first thing that somebody would tell them is just be quiet and contact the lawyer. Let them do your talking. Make sure you're not, don't, get yourself in trouble, by over talking, so to speak. So I don't find the fact that he's not singing or any of those things as suspicious. I find the fact that his phone was off during the time that the crime was occurred. I find the fact that,
DNA.
The vehicle that was passing by happened to be a white vehicle, 4-door sedan without a front license plate. His vehicle didn't have one at the time. I find the fact that, the DNA came back to him on the sheath. Those are the things that I find suspicious, and that's why it makes me think that that's why it's him. I mean, you also have to look in as far as like, all right, do we know for a fact that this occurred at 4 a.m.? Well, what is the evidence that we have? We have a vehicle that is driving around suspiciously that is stopped for a specific amount of time between 4:05 and 4:20. And during that time, there are some suspicious noises coming that are being recorded from the neighbor's house, right next door to the victim's home. And then immediately afterwards, a vehicle that was seen earlier is seen leaving at a high rate of speed. I think all those things, pretty good indication that this crime was committed at this time and by the person in that white vehicle. Now, that doesn't mean that that person is Bryan or one person or two people. It's just that, those are the connections. Those are the dots. There's nothing that's been out there that has excluded Kohberger from being the guy. You look at Dylan's, description of a person, at least 5'10" or higher with bushy eyebrows. Probably were able to determine race, that he was a Caucasian male. Based on those things, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is Kohberger, but it doesn't exclude him from being the guy. So, for instance, if Dylan said it was a 5'4", 325-pound guy, well, shoot, that's definitely not him. Scratch him off the book.
I'm 5'7", but you got the weight.
And so, the white vehicle without the front license plate, if they comes back, they go check it out, and he had a front license plate. Could he have taken it off? Yeah. But the fact that he had a vehicle that was registered and that didn't give him the option of having a front license plate, so Pennsylvania only gives you one. All right. Well, that doesn't exclude him from being the guy.
Yep.
His phone being off, does that mean it was him? No, but it doesn't exclude him from being the guy. Yeah. So at a certain point, when you're doing the the probability thing, where you're check marking this, check marking that, kind of points in one direction. Now, the one thing that I'll finish this off with this. The one thing that also is concerning with it not being Bryan Kohberger is how wild does that story have to be for it not to be him? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he would have handled the knife sheath that was at a garage sale maybe, and shortly after he handled it, and the real killer went behind him and bought it, and just so happens to drive a white car without a front license plate.
But coincidentally, they have an Amazon receipt for that same knife.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at a certain point, to me at least, but like you guys said, he's innocent until proven guilty. We have not yet once said that he is 100% guilty and that, throw him away, lock the key, get the firing range going. Never once has that come out.
Sure.
Yeah. Is there some weird crap that could happen? Like, I never thought Odinist would be involved in that Richard Allen stuff until it came out.
Me either.
Can weird stuff happen? 100%. 100%. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I think that if Bryan Kohberger gets off on this, it's more on a technicality. For one, getting his historical data and his phone that day, whether or not he turned it off or turned it on, is all based on his experience and training and knowledge in criminal justice. In my opinion, that's not enough to violate somebody's rights and see where they were at that night. I think they'd have to have a little bit more information than that.
Yeah.
And I think that can be thrown out. The DNA thing, I don't think is getting thrown out as much as everybody thinks it will. I think that's pretty solid and stuck in. And it's going to come down to how much jurors believe the DNA, in my opinion, in this case.
Yeah. I agree with you. When looking at this case, I think that he makes sense as a suspect. And there's a lot of people out there that believe he's innocent. And I think they're explaining it or portraying it the wrong way by making it seem like, oh, there's just no way Bryan could be guilty in this situation, when yet no, there is a way. It looks like it. All these details line up. I mean, I understand it's trace DNA and touch DNA, but the reality of the situation is the DNA was there on site, and that's something that the defense is going to have to explain. They're going to have to talk about. It's not like they can go into court and be like, oh yeah, you know, because it's trace DNA, that just doesn't matter. You know, I don't even know why we're talking about this. They still have to explain how it could have got there, and there's no way around that. But my big concern is this isn't a strong case in the way that we look at Gilgo was a strong case. I even feel like Murdaugh would have been a little bit of a stronger case, because if you take any of these pieces of evidence out of the Kohberger case, I think it's going to be very hard to stick it. You know, I'm hoping they have more. I really am. I hope they have the right guy, because you know, like we said from the beginning, it's a scary, scary world if he's not the right guy. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely 100% a circumstantial case from what we know now. You know, there's no murder weapon. There's no, you know, victim's DNA on his person, his vehicle, and his apartment. You know, there's no blood transfer on anybody. It's touch DNA. It's very circumstantial. You know, it's not a open shut case, in my opinion. You know, I think that the circumstantial evidence that they do have is pretty strong, but you're right. If any of it gets thrown out, it's going to make it for a much more difficult time to prosecute this guy.
The Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, do you guys think he's going to testify? And if he does or doesn't, does that affect your thought of his guilt?
No,
it doesn't affect my thought of his guilt, but I don't think he will. I think he's too smart to testify. But I don't think he's a superhero. Like, I don't think he's a genius the way I think he's incredibly intelligent. But I don't know why everyone wants to paint him as this like superhuman Einstein genius who can do anything. Like,
I mean, it was almost a really good crime. So let's just
if
say
he's guilty, then maybe. But I mean,
the crime itself was a pretty genius crime. So if he is guilty, it makes sense where he's using his trained experience, which he was going as for a doctorate's program in criminology. You know, you can tell in this crime.
But look at the Zodiac killer. Like,
but that's also a different time frame too, though.
Yeah,
you know, we didn't have the same kind of advancements then that we do now. The same thing with Bundy. Bundy never would have been as successful as he was as a killer,
or the Golden State Killer,
right? Or the Golden State Killer. But I don't think he's going to testify, and I don't really think it has anything to do with him personally. If I was his attorney, and I know he's an awkward person, right? He doesn't have a lot of experience as, say, a salesperson with talking with people. He comes off awkward. He's not easily connectable when talking or being watched or looked at by other people. Then I would keep him away from that stand, because it wouldn't help him.
Yeah, if he comes up there and he's not likable, that's terrible.
Right.
That's terrible. That's not good.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You know, that makes more sense, you know. So, and just in general, then, you know, you guys wouldn't, you know, whether a person testifies or not isn't an indication to you guys whether the person is guilty or not. It's a case by case situation.
Oh yeah.
So what about the downfall though? Like him losing his
job,
PA or.
Well, we have a little bit more details on that it seemed like it was a specific professor that was a man that he was having issues with.
It was also students.
Yeah, he was having issues with female students.
The students were complaining about him. The only thing is we haven't personally been able to lock down anything that has said that it was female students specifically, but all students thought he graded too harshly or unfair, or were trying to hold all the students to the same standards that he held himself to, which I was in college. If I had a professor or a TA that was doing that, I'd be pissed off too, you know, because you're at a different level. So why grade me at your level?
There was a specific female student that he was harassing and asking out multiple times. To the point that other PhD students began to tally up every time Bryan Kohberger was disrespectful to professors or being condescending towards female students, and in particular, this specific one. They, according to news sources, which you got to take that with a grain of salt. Sure. Some of these are, painting people in a certain direction, right?
Mhm.
According to that, those news sources, that they wouldn't leave him alone with this person. He was trying to make like meetings super late or something like that, and that he would position himself between females and the door in his office and things of that nature. And there's more than just that. Everywhere he's gone, that he's had access to being around females, he's gotten in trouble. Like, for instance, he got kicked out of the law enforcement thing in school because, well, it doesn't say why, but he gets moved to a place where there's an HVAC class. And I think one of the reasons was because there isn't women in that class. And then he ends up going and getting hired as a security guard in that same school later on while he's attending to sales. And before he leaves, he is forced to resign. His termination or his resignation letter has come out, and it specifically states that he is aware that if he does not resign, that he faces termination. So he was basically quit or you're fired. And then he becomes a TA. He's got problems there. The only place he seems to have excelled was in DeSales University, which was during COVID and things were online. So,
Yeah.
I wonder, there's a pattern here, and there's a disruptive pattern of behavior when it comes to Bryan Kohberger. And I get it. He's a PhD student, and a lot of folks have come to us saying, I don't think a PhD student would throw his life away for this and that. And the truth is,
Bundy did.
Yeah. The truth is too, his life wasn't going as well as we thought. He was getting fired as the TA, also. But the other thing too was he wasn't getting picked up as an intern for the police department. We know that he'd applied in the fall because he talked about, there's that released email between him and Chief Jenkins of the Pullman Police Department where he's referencing, meeting them about the internship. And then there's the probable cause affidavit, which indicate that he had applied again in the fall. And it's been released since that, according to news sources, that he wasn't selected then either. My theory is there's a background check that's involved, and when they contacted his previous employer where he was a security guard was probably a big reason why he didn't get it the first time. And then the second time, it was probably because they went and talked to his professors at WSU and said, this is probably a guy that's not, that's not going to work as a police officer in law enforcement.
See, and that's why I'm dying to get more clarification on this stuff because
if that's all true, then
no, I mean every story we hear, right? Because I've heard of every situation that you're talking about there, but on a flip side of giving a reason why he's innocent, you know what I mean? So I just hope we can continue to get some kind of clarification as we go through the cases because I feel like we've seen those same topics spun on both sides. And I think that's one reason why on our channel, we try and stay away from the human element, because once you get people involved and those people are saying, hey, the reason why he wasn't going to be a TA anymore was because of these things, and they have some kind of bias. Not that you do, but the people giving these stories have some kind of bias on why they need him to be guilty. And then you hear the same story, but from a perspective that shines a positive light on him and why the person saying that needs him to be innocent. A lot of times it gets really muddy and messed up when you include people in those stories or mainstream media or mainstream news. So I think that's why we like focusing on the evidence specifically, you know what I mean? Around the DNA,
the evidence when it comes to his schooling that's out there is, we know that there is a documented plan of action when it comes to his WSU. We know that schooling and being a teacher. We know that he was terminated December 19th. We know that there is a resignation letter that specifically states that if he doesn't resign, he's going to be terminated. We know that there is documentation from PhD students of specific issues that they had with Bryan Kohberger prior to and after the murders. I think that those are all bits and pieces of valid evidence, without painting a narrative, just kind of saying those things. without saying, I think that, he's got this or he's got that. I think he committed this crime because all these things, piled on.
Yeah.
Right now, what I just said was the problems that he was going through, which are documented and proven, and that there is evidence of, there is evidence of his termination. There is evidence of him not being selected as a Pullman Police Department, as an officer, intern officer. There is evidence of him, being forced to resign. There is evidence of him being forced to leave the law enforcement class and go to a class where, all right, we don't know specifically that it was because of females, but we know specifically that there were no females in that class. So that's the evidence that's there against him as well. So it's not speculatory. It's out there. I've seen the resignation letter. I've seen the documented plans from WSU. The PCA states that he didn't get, select, or that he had applied in the fall. We've seen the evidence where he'd applied in the spring as well. Yeah. So all those things are highly documented.
You're probably just more versed than I am on those things then, because I tend to lean into like the DNA evidence, crime scene evidence and stuff like that, because I personally just haven't seen that, but have heard, talkings and things like that about why this or why that. So
one thing I want to mention, though, is like, we covered the Gainesville Ripper case recently, which was serial killer Danny Rolling in Florida. And they had, what is his name again? Kemper? No, I'm thinking of somebody else.
Wasn't it Kemper?
No, that's another serial killer.
Yeah, but I thought it was...
his name is Ed Humphrey. It's Humphrey.
Yeah,
so that guy was in the area. Like, he was wandering around the woods the same as Danny Rolling was outside of the college. He had a cut up, scarred up face. He was losing his mind. He got arrested because he hit his grandma. And everybody thought it was him. Like, everybody thought it was him until certain pieces of evidence started coming back, like blood type wasn't the same as, what they found at the scene and stuff like that. But he was in jail for even when evidence against him saying for him, like for his innocence, was coming out, everybody in the police had tunnel vision and they were like, no, he's an accomplice. It doesn't match because he is an accomplice. So that's the accomplice's blood. They were finding ways to explain it away and still make him guilty. So I think we may have evidence that Bryan Kohberger wasn't a likable person. Maybe he was really socially inept, not good, or I think I used that word wrong actually. But he wasn't good in social situations. He didn't communicate well. Maybe he was a bit of an a-hole, but I don't think that confirms if all of that is true. It definitely sends up a huge red flag for me.
For sure.
Huge. I think that's a big deal, and could be signs that he could possibly do something like this. But so do we have, you said we have reports of the plan of action and all of that. Do they have written statements from students or women who felt threatened by him or anything like that?
That aspect I haven't seen. I mean, the only thing, and I want to answer this, I pulled this up, show us, Daniel. I have multiple times. So just go back and watch the Bryan Kohberger cases. In fact, we pulled up who John Snyder was, I think, before everybody else did. The day that it was broken that he was getting fired or had gotten fired as a TA student, and that he was having problems with his professor, it was very easy to follow, the breadcrumbs to as who was the professor and to pull up all the information. We have all of the documented stuff that has been out there. So go check it out. We've done we're probably over almost 200 videos on Idaho 4.
You guys have done a lot. You guys have definitely done a lot. You can't hear about this case on YouTube and around social media without hearing about your guys' channel, which is incredible.
It's a good thing.
You covered it. When did you guys start covering it?
Day after it happened.
Oh, yeah.
Dang, I wish.
Yeah. Monday, it happened on a Sunday, and we had a show on Monday, and we talked about it. We're like, hey, there's this crazy case that's coming out over here. And we started going into it. We watched the like everything. I mean, I have probably overindulged myself in information when it comes to this case. I have a pretty strong idea and indication of what happened, why it happened, when it happened, the whole
Yeah,
nine yards.
it was so
Yeah.
fresh. I mean, we had just started doing these reports where, like, the other day I was clearing out my phone and I still had Instagram photos when I was, sending photos through our chat so we can post on the videos from their actual Instagram accounts when they were still open.
Yeah.
And
And so we've covered this case from front to back. Like I said, I don't follow a narrative. Early on, I was, you know what, this guy may not have done it. There's some stuff that's not making sense.
Yeah.
And as more information came through, and as I spoke to more people and got more sources, and talked to victims' family members, and talk to victims' friends and other sources that I have that are in there or in the area or that know of the investigation, the more I was like, all right. And also the more I understood the evidence. So, the first thing that I didn't understand was like the cast stuff. I wasn't sure how it worked until, Kaylee Goncalves, Kaylee's mom, sent me an article on it, and kind of, I broke it down to a certain extent, and I was like, hey, this is probably a little bit more. And Bryan himself watches this apparently.
Yeah.
And, I was like, this is more precise than.
That's so bad.
Yeah, this is more precise than what triangulation is. And,
Yeah.
And then I looked at like some of the things that they were saying just kind of didn't make any sense. Like, for instance, when they put on there that he connected to a tower in Moscow, but he wasn't there, at first I was like, why are they even putting that on there? That almost sounds like they're saying that the pings are not accurate.
I wouldn't have put it on there. If it was me, as the expert in that report, I would have left cell phone and triangulation off altogether, because if defense brings an expert in, they're going to rip it apart, man. And I'm just worried because it says in there that Payne talked with somebody from the FBI to just verify his work. And that's, oh man, defense is going to have a field day on that one,
Right. And the only thing that takes out is the stalking aspect of it.
Yeah.
Which
sure.
If Bryan Kohberger committed this crime, let's just say he did, for complete speculation. He's not from the area. He was driving around late at night. He must have had to familiarize himself with the area. So he must have driven through there multiple times. So there's going to be a pattern of that. His defense team is probably going to use that as a evidence to show that he is that this is a pattern that he was doing before the murders. The issue is, according to that probable cause affidavit, he never went back around there after the murders.
Yeah.
Except for once on the 13th. So what happened to that pattern after the murders? So, that's where I would look at this type of situation. And, if I was investigating this case and or was the prosecution, which I'm not a lawyer, never have been. I'm familiar with, laws and things like that. But that's kind of where I would go with that. And, like I said, I was very much thinking in the early parts of this investigation that, maybe they got the wrong guy. I thought early that it made more sense for it to be, an ex-boyfriend or somebody close to it, because you have a knife. That's usually personal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But as the investigation went on and an ex-boyfriend wasn't arrested or a fraternity kid wasn't arrested, the more I thought that this person has to be further away from the circle. When you do an investigation like this, the first persons you're going to investigate are going to be the persons who were there at the scene, who are alive. And then it's going to go to family members and relatives and boyfriends and girlfriends.
Yeah.
And, they're going to be going through it like crazy. And they forensically downloaded their phones, all of them, the two victims, the boyfriends, everybody that was there on scene, they had their phones forensically downloaded. The more it went on, I just felt that the likelihood it was that close to the situation was less and less, and that mainly was going to be somebody from very far away. And so when Bryan Kohberger was arrested, I was like, well, I don't know who the guy is, and it makes sense based on what I'm thinking that this is somebody who's completely separated. You know, didn't know anything about the guy. I found out, you know, they said he was a PhD student. You know, the first thing that went through my head is like, why would this guy do this?
Yeah.
You know, just like everybody else has that question. And
Absolutely.
you know, you go through it, and like I said, at first I was like, you know, I think this guy could be 50-50. In fact, we had a thing going on between me, Blue, and Jaime. We're like, where are we at today? We're like at, you know, 48% guilty, 60% innocent.
Yeah.
I'm always around 85. That's 90. That's my
85.
Yeah, Blue was the guy that was, it's him, and it's got to be him. Me and Jaime were always kind of going back and forth around that middle range until we talked to Christy, and I got some information about some things. And at that point, I was like, all right, this makes the most sense.
Yeah. I think.
What about Steve though? Like only
about Steve?
Christy? Because Christy's the one that's like, it's him.
Yeah.
So and Steve's the one's like, well, I think it's him, but
it wasn't necessarily
It's open
her
to
saying
others.
that it was him. It was more about certain things that she said that she was told by law enforcement.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't take what her narrative was behind it. I just took the words of what they said.
Sure.
Okay.
You know,
Sure.
so
Yeah.
like if somebody were to say, like, for instance, completely different scenario, let's say there's a robbery and somebody says, I think they came in through the window because the window was broken and there was glass on the inside. And I wouldn't care for where they said they think they came through. The only thing that I want to hear is, oh, there's a broken window, glass on the inside. I'm going to look in that area. And it was something like that. She told me something. And I was like, okay, based on just that. Yeah. Based on that, this whole thing made sense to me.
Yeah. And I think that I think anyone that comes to the table, whether you think that Bryan Kohberger's guilty, whether you think that Bryan Kohberger's innocent, I think if you can't look at both sides logically and understand, one, how they have come to the conclusion of his guilt, and two, how someone could come to the conclusion of his innocence, I think you're wrong regardless of what side you're on, because I think realistically, until we have more evidence around this, it's not a strong case. And I understand why people would think he's innocent. But then on the flip side, I look at it and there are some very key details that the defense should be worried about, you know, with the evidence around whether you take the cell phone or not, his DNA's on scene there, and they got to explain that like we were talking about earlier. So I think you would be crazy not to look at the situation and understand why people think he's guilty too, you know? And I think that's part of the reason why it has so much attention right now, is that there isn't a certainty 100% one way or the other.
Yeah. No, yeah, 100%. You know, but there's also other things to look at, and that'll kind of give you an idea. Like, for instance, when this investigation was going on, you know, I looked at what law enforcement were doing, when they were doing it, what was happening. For instance, there was that picture that was shown at 3:45 in the morning from a convenience store. And then about 2 days later, there's talks of them being in a town outside of that, outside of Moscow, coming from that direction. So that told me that at that point, they had no idea that this person came from out of town.
Yeah.
Right. Because they would have already gone there, whether they seen this surveillance video or not. They wouldn't need to go then after the fact. So they were trying to keep it all clustered in. And when it comes to the defense's side, what tells me that they don't got much is what they're fighting. They're literally fighting to put evidence in so they can take it out.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when it comes to the IgG makeup, the tree, the genetic stuff, that's not being used against Kohberger. The defense isn't saying, hey, Kohberger is guilty because we built this tree and because his cousin's cousin did this and we were able to match it to him. What they're saying is, we have probable cause to believe that Bryan Kohberger committed this crime because his phone was off during the commission of the crime, because he drives a white vehicle matching the vehicle that's seen, because, you know, his schooling, and because he had means, opportunity, the whole 9 yards. They give him the warrant for it at that point. For that, it's not basically because of.
I'll be right back.
Hold on, give me a second. I think I lost what I was saying.
No, you're good. You're good.
So, give me one sec. So they came up there. They used all that information against Bryan Kohberger. They didn't use, even though they got his name from the IGG report, they didn't use it to get a warrant for his DNA that matched
Right.
the DNA, his DNA to the sheath. And so
Yeah.
right now his defense team is saying, hey, we want that evidence being put into court. Now, if it comes back that evidence was done correctly, right? Because the assumption is that it wasn't. But let's just say it does come back correctly. I don't know why that's the automatic assumption. Oh, it was not done correctly. You know, I was like, what makes you think it wasn't done correctly? Well, anyways,
Yeah.
let's just say that, you know, well, I can have a pretty good assumption based on the fact that because of that information, they were able to test Kohberger and it came back as a match that it was probably done correctly and accurately. So just because that information is there and that was used to point in the direction of Bryan Kohberger, if they don't use it against him, I just don't get it, because what they're doing is they're saying, all right, we're going to put this evidence in just to take it out. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like, and the best scenario that I can give is, you know, if Big Blue was running a drug operation at his house, and I know a lot of the guys have heard this before, and let's just say he ripped off Jaime. Jaime comes up to a police officer and says, hey, you know, a couple of weeks ago, Big Blue was selling some dope. And that's all he says. He doesn't have to say why. He doesn't have to say, oh, yeah, because Blue, you know, shortchanged me or anything. He just say, hey, Big Blue selling dope out of his house. That's all I'm going to give you. You're a detective. Do your job and detect. Go investigate and, you know, do your thing. I'm not going to rat. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to go into court. You can't use my testimony. All right. So you say, all right, do you just let Blue continue his operation because you know you can't use this guy's testimony? No. You're going to go and say, all right, I'm going to sit on Blue's house, see if there's some pretty obvious tells that he has an operation, cars passing by at all hours of the night, leaving quickly, and so on, right? And then you end up stopping one of those vehicles and you find drugs on them. Then you pressure them into telling you who, you know, this person that you got the drugs from. Now, you know, are you going to get one or two people that aren't going to rat? Maybe, but the majority of people in that situation, when their life and their freedom is on the line, boom, you know, they narc them out. So I then go get a warrant for that house based on the arrests that I made and the visual stuff that I had seen. And I find these drugs, I arrest Big Blue, or the detective arrests Big Blue. And if they never used Jaime's testimony that he said, hey, it was Blue, like, does that mean that it throws that entire case away?
No.
So that's where we're at on this case with the IGG.
Do you know how they got to Kohberger? So it was literally just a tip, the car. That's it?
No, they got to Kohberger because of the IGG.
Yeah.
According to the state's documents, the only way that the FBI can even do an IGG report or makeup is if there's 0 suspects and no persons of interest. You know,
Okay.
if you have a person of interest or a suspect, all you would have to do is just go pull trash out of their home,
Right.
and then compare it to the sheath. And, you know, if you do a trash pull, that's completely legal. You don't need anything else to do it.
Right.
Right. Now, let's just say that Bryan Kohberger is wearing gloves all the time. And even though you have a visual of him, you just can't get DNA because he's that good. All right, we'll go to his parents' house, get a familial DNA match, and then go pick him up and then match it to him. Because that can work. That's not an IGG makeup tree. And a lot of people are getting that confused because they're saying there was a familial match on the genetics, you know, from the trash pull. That has nothing to do with the IGG stuff. What that is that they checked the trash and the DNA that they got came back to a match of the suspect's father.
Yeah.
So you can use that against them. That would have been, if I couldn't get a hold of Kohberger or whatever, or if he fled, right? Let's just say he fled the country and we couldn't find him. I have this information that it's him. To go get an arrest warrant to make it legal, I'm going to go pull the father or the mother's DNA, match it familial, and then get the arrest warrant based off of that. And then after that, you get the warrant to match to Bryan Kohberger's cheek to the actual DNA that's left on the sheath.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Personally, I'm not an attorney, but I feel like just based off my experience, I would be going a different route with that DNA evidence. I'm wondering if the defense is just using this as a step one, and then they're gonna exhaust all their options one at a time, because I think they have more of a capability to lean on the chain of custody with the sheath than they do the IgG stuff. And the reason why I think that is because, like, what you're just explaining right now is exactly what I had wrong in the beginning. I was thinking what you were saying, and then you were the one who clarified that. And I know you weren't here when he was explaining some of it, but just how it doesn't matter how they made that connection to Kohberger, just the fact that they got a tip because of this tree, and this tree led them to investigate this other area, right?
Right.
And I just wonder if they're gonna try to exhaust that. If it doesn't work, then move on to the next thing. If that doesn't work, move on to the next thing. So
yeah, so I think where the hang up is I think my suspicion, which this is totally suspicion, it's not based off of anything other than what we all have in front of us, is that he was a suspect, that they already had a tip, and that's why they ruled out all other suspects so quickly, so that they could use this DNA and link it back to somebody. But I think that's where, because I've read some documents that and some other things that show that they got a tip on him before the IgG stuff even possibly could have been processed.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally impossible to have it that fast. But I don't know. I'm not
There's
an
no way
expert
to
on
know.
that stuff.
The only thing with that is if they got a tip on Kohberger, there's no point to doing the IgG. There really isn't. All you would do is just go do a trash pool, whether it's at his house, like I
Right.
mentioned, where, if I got a tip saying, hey, it's Kohberger, all right, I'm going to go do a secret trash pool, which they did, according to the state's documents, or actually according to the defense documents, they bring up that the prosecution or law enforcement took a cigarette butt secretly from somebody to make it, do a DNA test. So they did investigate other people. And the way they cleared them out so quickly was when everybody cooperated, allowed for their phones to be digitally forensically downloaded. That probably cleared a lot of people more than anything, especially if you have this video of a vehicle at 4 a.m. and these noises that are coming out in that area. And if you're able to put somebody somewhere else actively using their phone, or in an area where the last time that they actively used their phone was too far to have gotten to the King Road residence in time.
Yeah.
That's a way you clear people real quick. And then for those that you can't, you ask them for their DNA. And if their DNA doesn't match to the ones on the sheath or anybody else in that house, then, if you don't have any evidence of them, it's not necessarily saying that they didn't do it. I mean, anybody that's cleared, somebody can be cleared today and arrested tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? But, they just have no evidence pointing towards that person being involved. And, to answer a question that was out there before, why is it, in my opinion, that they can't do the IgG until after all, law enforcement tactics have been exhausted? I don't know. You would think, especially if they had like a heinous crime where somebody is suspected of, taking the lives of 4 people, that you try to find that person as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could just be because, like, similarly to with the cast report, how clearly we've seen it used. Look at YNW Melly, like I was saying earlier. But even in that cast report, it says that do everything you can to not lean on the cell phone data, right? Except in situations where it's probably needed or necessary in order to close that case. I would assume that the IgG profile is probably similar to that, It's
Right.
not as strong as like a video evidence or blood on scene or, you know, eyewitness
Yeah.
lineup.
I think
No, I agree.
I think that was kind of the whole point with the IGG though is there if they I think the goal is to get it thrown out altogether.
Yeah.
Like you never had any good solid evidence to arrest this man. You had no reason to go after him, and I think that's like what they have been fighting for.
For sure.
Yeah, but they're not going to be able to throw it out.
I don't think so either. I think you're right.
And
Yeah.
the thing is, what did they discover after it was used is a little bit of damning evidence. But
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
serious? I mean, I know that they sell thousands of those knives, but coincidentally, he bought one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely right that there is too much there for them not to let this go to trial and sort it all out and get what really, you know, all the evidence out there and have the lawyers argue their sides.
Unless something gets dropped. Yeah. That's
Right.
that's the defense's goal, and the prosecution's worry is what could they get pulled off the table. So I just hope. I know a lot of people out there that believe he's guilty, believe there's a whole bunch of extra evidence that they're holding back, which is uncommon in most cases. But for the sake of this case, I hope that's true. You know.
Yeah,
And there's a gag order, so there likely is other things, but I think it's just building on the things that were laid out in the PCA.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that it's probably more of the same stuff, but more detailed and better.
Well, like
Hopefully.
we said, there was thousands of photos that we haven't seen one photo.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So we'll see what comes out in those photos. We'll see what comes out. My main thing is I want to see what he says if he gets put on the stand. I'm pretty sure he's not going to say anything, but I don't know. I think if it was me, I would go against my lawyer's wishes and I would talk to, hey, this was not me. I was just out for an evening stroll. But the DNA under the sheet is damning to me. To me,
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying I'm more around 80%. Now, the other part that I say that I'm not 100% that throws me off is, you know, when he asked if anybody else was arrested, because to me it sounds like it could have been an accomplice, not necessarily that went inside to help him out, but maybe somebody drove him. So
Yeah, that's my question is the car. That's what I always go back to is the car.
Well, there's just some weird circumstances
Like-
around it, you know, from they supposedly had those pictures in the beginning, and you have Chief Fry coming out and saying, hey, you know, we want the public to help us out and identify any Hyundai Elantras from 2011 to 2013 because we want to talk to the suspects that are inside. You know, all those things is what the general public's picking up and want to know more. You know, that's interesting. Why did they think suspects?
Yeah.
Why did they think 2011, 2013? Why did, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's very possible that it was them making a guess at the year and that they didn't know how many people were in the cars. So they said suspects just as a general term.
Yeah.
I think that's a possibility, but
which is they can and should say that, because if there ever was a second person and they would only say one person was in the vehicle, then they lose all credibility when it comes to the courts. So.
Yeah. It'd probably be hard to see how many people are in there with windows tinted and stuff too. So
yeah, I mean, I think they were having a hard time in the beginning. They didn't know what they were doing at first at all.
Yeah, I mean, they got help after a while, the FBI, and the FBI was in there pretty quick.
Oh, they were there, I think, like literally in the first couple days.
Yeah,
if not day one.
Yeah, I mean, they were right across the river or whatever, investigating the biggest drug bust that they had in December. You know, those kind of drug busts, they don't pop up out of nowhere. It's not like they were like, all right, bros, let's fly in and get these dudes. They've already been there for probably 6 months working on that case. That was the biggest drug bust Washington ever had, you know, and it was just right across the street, essentially.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a crazy situation. Mikey comes on the $5 super chat. I feel that the entire investigation should be investigated. Can't sweep the history of misconduct under the rug from investigators' past issues for me. I get it. But the thing is, it's whose issues are they? Like, who has the issues? I think it was, an ISP officer. What was his duties in the case? ISP officers, they weren't first on scene. They didn't comb the scene. They didn't pick up the evidence from the, from the house. They didn't pick up the sheath. They didn't investigate the sheath. That was the Idaho State Lab. There was a bunch of tips, and they took part in answering and asking questions from people who had tips. For the most part, I think that there was one guy that took part in the autopsy. But what can you do in the autopsy that that's going to, I don't know, affect the case in a certain way to make you think that Kohberger is the guy?
Yeah.
Right. And how did they come to Kohberger? The Kohberger wasn't from a tip or from those things. It was from the IGG. It was from the FBI. The phone data and pings and all that other stuff, that was from location data that another agency looked at as well. So if we're to believe that one of these guys is corrupt or did something corrupt, we also have to believe that these other officers and these other agencies that looked at the evidence saw the corruptness and turned a blind eye and said, you know what, I'm going to risk my career and my freedom for this crooked cop.
Yeah. And I mean, for the sake of the case, I hope it turns out like that, because I absolutely believe Tolson is a stain for the case. And I hope that he didn't touch anything else other than just the autopsy. So,
Yeah.
because he's a problem. He's a problem for sure. He's
but
the type of officer that, we definitely don't want out there. But
yeah, the Dr. Moore case, it's just
scary.
It's scary. Like that explanation you were talking about, what could it be? Like whatever it is, it has to be pretty fantastical to explain how they got to Kohberger and it being somebody else. The Dr. Moore case, in my opinion, is that.
Yeah.
It is that fantastical other side nobody would have ever thought. That these, officers entirely framed evidence. They falsified evidence. They framed him.
They did.
And, now they're going to get sued for it.
Yeah.
But it's bad. It's real bad. And you wonder why him? Well, just because he was a chiropractor and they thought, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Competition. Because they're both chiropractors.
There's so many layers to this case. And if they would just open it up and be transparent, it would fix most of these issues.
But yeah, it's a bad one. And that's what he was involved in.
Yeah.
And, he even stalked Dr. Moore after the fact. So
it's tough. It's tough. That's
threatening witnesses.
The opposite we want to see from our police officers.
That is the main thing, honestly, that really sends up a red flag, is the fact that there's two officers involved in the Kohberger case that were involved in that case, and there's proof that
but how
there
much
was misconduct.
How much was their involvement? Like, was it taking tips? Was it being active in the investigation? Was were they the investigator? Did they make the arrest on Kohberger? Did they get the evidence for Kohberger? And if they didn't, I understand that there might be, something there in this person's past and why he's an officer. I don't know, but, that doesn't necessarily mean that this investigation is a sham or completely, corrupted, because of a bad apple or two. The involvement, is it there? Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of officers and FBI agents and ISP officers that were involved. And so, based on what the information and the evidence is, as far as how they got to Bryan Kohberger, I find it very difficult that somebody's going to be able to frame him without one of these other agencies, whether it's the Idaho State Lab looking at something saying, hey, this DNA that you put in there looks weird, looks, planted, whatever. You have Idaho State Police, you have FBI, Moscow Police Department, and then in Pennsylvania, you had the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania over there and their FBI team that assisted in the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. So all these guys, would have to be in some sort of weird cahoots against each other or with each other.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think the same for the Dr. Moore case when they literally changed timestamps on a video and you can see that like in
But
metadata?
how many departments were involved in that case?
That's important, and I don't personally know that, and that is important. But it was local. It was local and ISP.
So ISP is essentially subcontracted out to these other locations. Is how it works. They'll send their officers out to these other police departments to fill in and things like that. And that's how we got to Dr. Moore's. Yes, they were ISP officers. Yes, they were contracted through that police department. And yes, all of that work went through that police department, the Bonners Ferry Police Department. So essentially it involved 4 people. Now, were 2 of them people managers and people leaders of that department? Absolutely. And that looks absolutely horrible. But I don't think that it involved everybody, like to your point, Daniel. And I don't think that in a situation like that, in the Kohberger situation, I personally don't think that everybody would have to be in cahoots for a few bad officers to soil it. And again, I hope that's not the case, but I think it could be 1 or 2 people that could ruin that case and make it look like a conspiracy,
and other officers may not really know exactly what's going on. Like the chips can be being laid in front of them and they can be following them and they trust their other officers to like tell them the truth, and, not lie. But I don't know, like if certain things are changed that are supposed to be factual, like video is direct. That is like supposed to be factual. That is it.
That's
it's
like
on
the
video.
best evidence.
It's on video.
Yeah.
And then you find out it's been faked, like it's been altered. I mean, and he was literally convicted, not just charged. He was convicted, like full on, and then exonerated.
Right.
So that just makes me question the integrity of the investigation a little bit. It makes me worried, but I think it'll come out eventually. Yeah. I don't think these things will be hidden forever. So, but I do not think, like, say you're right. Say they were just taking tips. They didn't collect evidence. They didn't really do much other than that. Then I think it's possible there's still integrity to the case. And I still think it's possible that, they got the guy. And I think it's important to see it from both sides. I have to ask questions because that case, man.
Yeah, the Dr. Moore case just is scary, and it's like,
I'm gonna have to look.
We got tin hats, but not every case is tin hat, So.
Yeah, no, for sure. And and I agree. I mean, there's some weird stuff that happens, and are there bad cops? Yeah, 100%. Just like there's bad police officers, bad doctors, bad firefighters,
for sure.
Bad everything across the board. My thing is like, what plausible action could this person have taken? We know that police were called right away. The crime scene was taped off, and investigators were there. We know that CSI went out there and were on scene when when Payne showed up. I can assume that knife sheath was collected immediately and processed and sent out to the Idaho State Lab. So my question is, when's the opportunity to get involved into that situation to frame Kohberger if they weren't involved into the case till much later?
Yeah, and that's our question.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that's going to be, if there's a Brady Giglio thing, we're all aware of that.
Yeah.
Is that person, how involved is that person in this case? And if their involvement is minute, it's very small, and they don't have any access to anything. I like Bad Santa.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Bad timing.
Absolutely.
Speaking of timing, we're way over our normal stuff.
It was a good conversation, though.
It was.
Yeah. I almost cracked open the bottle of bourbon and started. It's right here, it's right next to me. So I'll behave. I only had one Truly, and I didn't get white girl crazy. So,
there you go.
That's a pretty nice bar behind you.
Yeah.
Only if it was real. My bar's smaller. My bar is a little bar, but I still have a variety of bottles. Maybe I get 10. But
So if you guys aren't following the Thought Riot podcast, go check them out. They're on YouTube. This is their image. This is their channel. Go subscribe. Go check them out. Is there anywhere else?
Hot dog. Come check out the hot dog.
Check out
I
the hot
kept
dog.
hearing the hot dog guy, and I'm like, did somebody see me eating the hot dog?
Look, go, yeah, that one. Go on that third one
Go back up a
right
little.
there. Yeah. Wait.
Oh,
Oh, never mind. That's the live. My bad.
yeah, the live, he's not dressed as a hot dog. The
no.
pre-recorded video, he's dressed
There's
as
a hot dog there.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Yes. We had people complaining about our costumes and you know, just being wild, man, and being like, how can you talk about that and wear costumes? So I went out and specifically bought the hot dog for them. I figured it was fitting, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not everybody's going to create content in the same way. I mean, we
Yeah.
sometimes consume alcohol. Big Blue does it more often than I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has his little drunk turkey hat that he sports out all the time.
I get
That's a
it.
tin hat. That's how you do it.
See,
That's-
I got a turkey in my head today, so
That's super cool. Yeah, I think it's important to have like
Yeah.
some relief. Like we are talking about heavy things. Why not like I don't know, just have some relief here and there.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely do it on our end. But this is y'all's channel. And if you guys aren't following them, go make sure you go check them out and let them know that Drunk Turkey Show sent you guys. On Friday night, we're going to have a retired CSI criminal scene investigator. We're going to be going through the Bryan Kohberger scene. We're going to be going through the Richard Allen scene with this CSI and the evidence that was discovered, how it's discovered, how it's processed, all those, you know, information and good stuff to talk about. Don't want to miss it. So if you're still here on our channel and you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Go hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Y'all guys got any final words for everybody? We'll start off with you guys, Thought Riot Podcast.
No, just that we appreciate you guys having us here. This conversation was awesome. And, you know, I think we said it in the beginning that everybody that follows you and the Drunk Turkey Show community is amazing. So we appreciate all of you guys being so welcoming to us and keeping that chat alive as we're talking through these topics. And just shout out to you guys, man. I think it's important for people in the true crime community or YouTube community to stick together and create content together and uplift each other. So, you know, you guys are awesome and a positive part of that community. So we appreciate it.
I just heard
Thank you,
banging
guys.
outside. Sorry. But yeah, I respect both of you a ton. I think we had a really good conversation. I just like that you guys are super respectful and, you know, we can talk without it turning into like heated emotional BS or something, you know, because like the comments are wild, you know, you guys see it. And I think it's important to remain level-headed and respectful and have a little fun here and there for the like relief, because it's a lot. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I loved coming on. Thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you. We enjoyed it. We should do this again some other time.
Yeah.
And if you ever want us to join you guys, we're more than happy to do so.
Absolutely. We'll set it up.
Sounds good. Big Blue, what are your final words of
That'll
inspiration?
work. All right. Well, actually, it's a saddening story. You know, I just want to say my thoughts and prayers do go out to the people out in Maine. You know, it's a sad story. I hope this catches guy. I hope that, you know, it's soon. I mean, if that video was a hoax, I'm sorry. You guys had your hopes up. And it's a sad story. We're going to be seeing this throughout the next couple of weeks. I mean, I'm pretty sure we covered a little bit tonight. We're going to cover it another day. And some people will say, you know, hey, you're talking about people's families, and that's right. We do talk about people's families, their victims, and we're sorry that this happened to them. I'll take care, guys.
100%. 100%. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you guys on Friday. Peace out.